What are we waiting on?
Yeah, it won't.
Oh.
The official stuff. Get our mic. We can test our lines, Mr. Chair.
Check 1, 2.
Check that.
Tick
Yeah.
tock, tick tock, tick tock.
You can't pick on Stacy. That's not allowed.
Uh-oh. Calling for technical support.
Hit the start button. I got it going, never mind, thank you. Okay, guys, we're rolling for some reason.
Okay, let's get started. We have quorum. So first item, public comment on the agenda items. Anybody have any comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to approval of last month's minutes, or last meeting's minutes. We have a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
We have a motion, how about a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to new business. Guess it's our beach ordinances.
Well, actually,
Just where you wanna-
that'll have to be under old business, the codes. So is there any new
Any
business?
new, okay.
And otherwise of the code revision process.
Does anybody have any new business?
Are you going over the activities ordinance?
That's
why
old
it's here?
business?
Yeah, that's part of the code
Okay.
revision process. So.
Okay, then I don't have anything.
I just have an inquiry on signage for the coastal dune lakes. Would this be the appropriate place to introduce that?
Sure.
So just a few questions from homeowners, mainly in the area where I live in Gulf Shore. Is it posted rather that you cannot dig out? In other words, try and make the lake flow into the Gulf? I don't know if you've ever faced that before,
have.
Brian?
No, Mo, it's not posted at every coastal dune lake outfall. It is posted at a couple of the prominent ones, like Western Lake and Eastern Lake. And some of that signage that we had was non-consistent. So as part of my, what I call sign consolidation program, we've over the last couple of years, we've been reducing the signage at our beach access points in favor of a singular, consistent signage. Okay? Like I say, Eastern Lake and Western Lake have public beach accesses at the outfall. Other outfalls typically don't have those. And so it's, in favor of not messing up the Dune Lake outfall vista, we've opted for not having signage there. Code enforcement actively enforces, digging out of the outfall.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
We used to have one at Oyster Lake. Do you know what happened to it?
That's maintained now, isn't it?
A sign that said, "Do not dig out the outfall." I believe it went away when that outfall was recreated. When they rebuilt it to make it flow naturally.
It could be.
Yeah.
I don't remember when. It was fairly large. It was, and frankly, it didn't do a lot of good because it was up on the street side.
Yeah.
And nobody dug there. It was
Like-
down at the beach.
Yeah. Like I say, when I got here, the signage here was what I would call roadside signage.
Yeah.
And it wasn't very effective. So,
Any more new business? How about the audience? Anybody in the audience want to bring up any new business? Okay, let's move on to the old business.
Okay.
Brian, you want to?
yeah, I'd like to address the thing. Okay, so this is the point in the year where we address the existing Chapter 22, and since we now have a Chapter 23 customary use code, every year we take an effort to review and assess the existing code to look for areas where it may be revised to better suit how we use the beach. We've had a couple of previous meetings. One is the Destination Improvement Committee meeting, which is equal to this board, except they normally deal with more beach amenity improvements, thus the name Destination Improvement Committee. This committee, Beach Management, deals more with how we manage the actual beach in relation to codes and operating practices like beach maintenance, beach code enforcement, stuff like that. The other meeting we had was our post-season vending meeting. That's where we take in input from, it's mainly geared towards vendor input, but they're open meetings, and we encourage the general public to attend, to offer up suggestions of how we may manage the beach better. So that was the meeting we had last week. This morning, this board will discuss amongst themselves. I tasked them earlier in the year with making sure they understood the code, in particular the revisions we made last year, and bring back what they felt was viable solutions to areas of the code that may be in need of revision. So this morning they'll talk about the different areas of the code that they feel need that, and then we'll ask the general public if they have any ideas. So the way it ought to be presented is, this is what we see as the problem or conflict with the code. Here's our viable solution, and appreciate your consideration. And so all the information that's taken in today from board members and from members of the gallery will be taken forward, be compiled with the other meetings and other information we have. So other forms of input are what we experience on the beach, and it's our beach activity summary. So we collect and catalog all the activity our beach code enforcement does. And then, of course, throughout the year we receive public input in the form of complaints. We take that information and compiled with information we receive in these meetings, all goes forward to the Tourist Development Council, who is an advisory committee to the Board of County Commissioners. And they weigh in on it. They may offer up some additional solutions or revisions, and all that information with their disposition. So this body and the TDC, Tourist Development Council, operates under Robert's Rules of Orders. So this morning we'll compile this list, and then we'll go back through it, and we'll have a vote on committee as approve or disapprove. And then it all moves forward with that disposition, be it approval or disapproval, because it carries weight. And eventually it will make it to the Board of County Commissioners, where the Board of County Commissioners will then, in their regular meeting, weigh in on it, have discussion amongst their board. They will receive public input at that meeting, and that list will be what I call, pared down or compiled into what they will then ask the county attorney to make a draft copy of the code with the suggested revisions. And then they will schedule a public hearing to adopt those revisions. And at that point, the code has been changed, revised, and adopted. So this morning, I'd like to make sure that a few things we understand in the meeting is that, as board members, we're tasked with, doing what's good for all the county and not necessarily good for the individual. I do recognize that as individuals, we do have ideas or problems that affect us. And so I'm not saying that you can't do that. I'm just saying that in your pronouncement of the issues you have brought today, remember that we do operate as a board. The other thing is we will have difference of opinion, so everybody respect the difference of opinion and treat everybody with courteousness and fairness. Other general rules is, if you got a cell phone, please put it on mute or vibrate. If you got to take a call, take it outside. And when we get to the public comment section of it, John, as chairman, will recognize you, and if you'll come to the podium and try to coordinate your thoughts and keep them as concise and as quick as you can, so as to give everybody in the room that would like to talk the opportunity to talk. Normally our meetings last for an hour and a half or 2 hours. We try to keep it under 2 hours. If we need to go over, we'll go over. So that being said,
Get
John,
long-winded, we're gonna turn the clock off.
well, I don't like using the clock, but like I say, let's just everybody be observant, of everybody else's time and respect their comments and statements. And if you have questions during the process, I'll be glad to answer them as a source of information. I'm actually a facilitator. I'm not a committee member, but I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have in regard to the existing code, how we operate on the beach as code enforcement or beach maintenance, and all that. So that being said, John, if you would like to get started with the old business of
Let's
Chapter
start
22.
here among us. Anybody have any comments or anything they want to add? Lisa?
I have comments, yeah. Okay. I went through and just the first one I actually have is page 4. And I just want to, I'll just go through each one. Okay, starting with tents. Tent means a portable shelter of skins,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
Lisa,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. If you could start with section number. So I'm assuming you're in definitions right now.
Yes, I'm in
As
definitions.
opposed to referring to pages, because some documents are numbered differently.
Oh, okay.
Okay, page number differently. So if you could
Yes, I'd
say
be happy to do
definition section, definition of,
Yeah, and since they're in alphabetical order, that
Yeah.
helps out a little bit. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm in the definition section, and it's on tents. I added the words nylon, and where it says tent means portable shelter of skins, cabin, or the like. I just went ahead and added nylon because there were a lot of those in there. And then where it says in the second sentence, often secured by ropes fastened to pegs in the ground, I said ropes or flaps, because we're coming up with a lot of these sport umbrellas now that look like an umbrella when they're vertical, but they are designed to lie down, and they have flaps and pegs and all that good stuff. That said, well, this is definition, so I'll save that for later. Okay, I know from the vendor meeting that the photographers have now become acutely aware that they're vendors. And, in this vending means offering for sale or rent as part of contractual agreement, so forth and all. I just made a note that we needed to make sure that the photographers understood that they were part of the vendor set, but I could tell that it already is occurring. So that one's kind of a moot point now. Okay, then when we go on to section 22-31, horses, dogs on beach. Number 2, I'm curious.
What page was that?
Oh, it's on page 8 of was
Okay.
sent to us, and it's about midway down. My question is, the dog permits are from August 1st to August 1st, is that right?
yes, ma'am.
And I'm curious why we are not willing to prorate at all. So let's say somebody moves here in July, and they have a dog, and they want to get it licensed and all, or permitted and all. Why are we not willing to prorate a permit? I know they're not that expensive.
It's only
I think
$40.
they're $40.
Yeah.
But that effectively means if they want one from, for the month of July, they've got to pay $40, and then August 1st, they've got to pay another $40.
Okay.
It's just an observation, and I don't know what the will of the board or the commission would be on that. But I have had some people who are recent to the area that have said to me, they've gotten caught without a permit effectively, and have said,
Bad dog owners.
Right. I would like to wait. They said I've got to buy one August 1st, so I just wanted to wait till August 1st, but I wanted to be able to bring my dog, and I said, well,
Okay.
you risk code enforcement. So, okay, that's that one.
Okay.
Okay, then going on to page 11, and unfortunately, because with the ones I skipped, I don't know exactly what section this is, but it has to do with fishing.
Okay, that'd be 2254.
Okay, thank you. to fish in the Gulf of Mexico after having been warned by code enforcement or whatever that the health and safety of bathers is being endangered. Is there some way, because I've had both bathers, as they're called here, and fishermen express frustrations where, you know, bathers are there first, and here comes a fisherman and wants to cast the net out or the fishing line out, and you know there's children around and such. And I've also had the flip side where a fisherman got out there, you know, or multiple fishermen got out there at, you know, 6 o'clock in the morning. They were already there, and then people show up and basically crowd them in. I don't have all the answers to that. But I'm not sure what defines bathers being endangered. You know,
I don't like that one either.
Yeah, it's an officer discretion situation.
Okay, well, I just wanted to bring attention to the fact that there is no real clear definition of how fishermen and bathers should interact or not.
Yeah.
And that if we want to address that, that's something that could stand it. Okay, in that same section, just going down a little farther to glass containers, I would just, it shall be unlawful for any person while on the beach to possess or utilize any glass or ceramic bottle or container. I would just say breakable container. Add the word breakable, because isn't that really the issue, is we don't want things that are broken up on the beach.
Broken glass.
Right,
Well-
but if it's anything that can break, I mean, it can be sharp, I guess is my point. So whether it's ceramic or whatever kind of, but anyway, the word breakable seemed to sort of clarify anything that's breakable.
So what you would say is add more inclusion.
Just where
into
it
that.
says ceramic bottle or container, just add the word breakable. Because they'll come up with some new product that's also breakable, but it's not glass or ceramic. Chemistry is wonderful that way. Okay, there was one on here about on the littering, and it included cigarette butts. And I noticed at the recent cleanup, one of the things that the people who did the cleanup said was they found thousands of cigarette butts. Do we have any desire perhaps to ban smoking on the beach?
You know, we as a board can, you know, make a recommendation. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why people like to smoke on the beach, because it seems like such a healthy environment that you'd think they might
Well, I don't know
want to
why
do it
people
out there.
smoke,
but-
period, but
Yeah,
they
but
do, and I don't like the butts either, but
Yeah.
I don't think we can.
it'd be
prohibit
nice
them
if they
from-
clean them up. I know as a volunteer beach ambassador, what I suggested to people, almost everybody has cans of something. And I just suggested that they use an empty can and put the butts in it and then deposit it in the trash as they left. And everybody I talked to seemed amenable to that. So, I mean, that's fine with me, but it is a shame that we end up with, you know,
I
that
agree.
magnitude of them. That was one of the main things I actually read complaints about, how much of that was on the beaches.
Well, you can see where the chair was set up. I mean, it'd be a little circle, just butts all stuffed in the ground, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
do you as a board member want to bring that as an item to discuss, to vote on later in this meeting? No smoking on the beach, or
Well,
I
or
think we need to,
I,
that's a problem, but I don't know what.
yeah. Yeah, I'm not, I mean, I'm okay. It's just a comment. Some things here are just an observation, some are changes.
Maybe some kind of signage or something. Cigarette butts are litter too, you know? It's something that
Yeah.
makes people aware.
Well, and on the customary use beaches, tobacco use is prohibited, so that, you know, but good luck catching that one. I mean, it's you know, it's not the kind of thing that's that obvious
Okay.
anyway. On now I've moved on to page 14, and it's, I guess, still under this same section, or it may be the next one, but it's under sound amplification. I'm wondering if 100 feet is a little much. that, you know, most people now could use some sort of personal headset or little earbuds or something like that if they want to listen to music. But 100 feet for, you know, for other people around them, if somebody's playing music that doesn't appeal to everybody else that's in 100 feet of them, it just seems like that's a pretty big amount of distance. Maybe 15 feet or something.
What number are you on, Lisa?
It's page 14I. I'll have to, I'm sorry, I should have noted the sections, but I didn't want to copy every single one of the pages if I didn't have anything on it. It's under,
Got it, I found
you
it.
did? Okay. So I would suggest maybe something more like 15 feet so that it's, or use earbuds. I mean, they can listen to it at whatever volume they want if they have some sort of personal hearing device. But I did research some other ordinances in other places, and some of the ones that had an ordinance about sound on the, you know, personal boom boxes or whatever, had 15 feet. And I thought, well, that sounds like, you know, it'd be a pretty reasonable. If you heard it beyond that, it'd be very minimal. And of
Okay.
course, I'm not talking about something where there's a permit holder that's having a wedding or whatever. I'm talking about just personal people sitting on the
Right.
beach. Okay,
So change distance to 15 feet.
that's what I would suggest.
Okay.
Okay. That one is moot. Okay, on page 15, it's vendor stuff, I think. It's, shall be unlawful to place beach equipment on the beach within 15 feet of the water's edge or within 15 feet of the toe of dune. This one is less to do with vendors, but is that supposed to apply to everybody?
No, it's applied differently on public beach versus privately held beach, okay? So, and it's also, it is in 2254 and in 2260. So it's general use of the beach and beach vendors. Beach vendors that have specific place permits on privately held property do not have, are not restricted by the 15 foot to the water's edge. They are everybody is restricted to the 15 foot from the toe of the dune for emergency vehicle access.
Okay, okay, and I apologize, I skipped Q right above that question. It shall be unlawful for any person to use, erect, or possess a tent greater than 6 by 6 by 6 on the beach, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I know this one's gonna be really popular, but because of the issues we had this year with enforcement and the consistent complaints that I personally heard and situations I personally observed, I would propose that we get ahead of the game nationwide in beach, popular beach resort areas. There are already complete bans on tents except for special events or in the case of a beachfront owner that has, you know, they want their own tent on their own property, then there could be a permit to allow that. Personally, the beachfront owners, I know a lot of them don't ever use tents, don't want tents, and would be fine without them. But places like New Jersey, Myrtle Beach, parts of North Carolina or South Carolina and Delaware, they have already banned tents on the beach. And one of the things that I've noticed since living here full time is that we often end up kind of behind the 8 ball on planning for future growth. And it's in a wide variety of areas, but people want to come live here, and that's great, and people want to come visit here, and that's great too. But we have only so much room for all the people. And so what the press has dubbed as beach spread has become an issue in almost all places that attract a lot of people. So what I would propose is that we just go ahead and bite the bullet. I know it's not gonna make people happy, but just not allow tents on the beach unless they are permitted. And the reasons to permit would be basically special events or because it's on someone's actual deeded property. It solves the issue of who can report, because that's been something that's come up this summer as a result of the tent ban, or anything that's 6 by 6, and customary use bans them entirely. People don't like to have to tattle. That's, kind of human nature. We'd rather not have to report things constantly. Makes it hard for code enforcement because they may drive by one day and nobody's reported an infraction. So they go right by a tent that's clearly in violation, but nobody reported it because they weren't the owner. And I've had some people that live in a neighborhood and know their neighbor isn't there, for instance, report it. They try to report it and get told they can't because they're not the owner.
Personally, I don't have a problem with the tents. I think we should allow them, but we should leave them on the back tier, not allow them forward of, the back tier. What we have now is certainly not working. I've watched people this summer go down to Blue Mountain Beach. Of course, they can't set up right there, but they just go to both sides and got tents set up all down the beach. Most of the property owners there don't live there. They rent their houses out, so they're not going to say that you can't put a tent in their front yard because they don't want their guests to not be able to put a tent in their front yard. So what we're doing now is really not working. We either need to allow them, just put them in the back tier, or just totally not allow them because, like I say, it's not working.
Well,
And most of the people don't live here, that have the beachfront property.
John,
I mean, was it
that's really-
25%, is it? Maybe
well,
30%?
but it's a substantial number still. And I think one of the things that had occurred to me that's more in the neighborhood of a compromise, but it sort of then gets into the sign ordinance, is if there were signs on either end of beaches where certain things are allowed, like, let's say anything that's a public beach that's either Walton County owned, leased, whatever, if there were boundaries that said, end of public beach on the east and the west end, then I think you could more easily have some rules that would apply to the public beach area.
Well, that's what I'm saying. At Blue Mountain, they know. I mean, I guess the lifeguard there may be telling them, that you can't set up. But you go just to the boundaries and they're just all set up from there on, in the private property. Because most of the private property owners aren't saying that they can't set up there because they want their guests to be able to set up there. So everybody's going down, they just go to the left or the right of the beach access and set up their tents. And code enforcement's watching them. They just, there's no, they have no way to enforce that. And I think most of the property owners, there's more that rent their property than live here full time. And I don't think the majority of them are not gonna say people can't use tents in their property.
Well, they may not.
Yeah.
But
I think we just,
but again, if they
to
have,
your position, either we just totally don't allow them at all, or we allow them and put them in the back.
Well, I do totally agree. If they're going to be allowed, they should be back.
Yeah.
Because that then, what was happening, and I observed this myself doing my little beach ambassador walking, is, somebody will be set up with their chairs and umbrellas or whatever, and they sit back a little bit farther, so they're not subject to the tide through the day, because a lot of people go and set up and stay pretty much all day. And here comes somebody with a tent, and because there's room, they'll set up right in front of them. And you're like, just common courtesy would prevent that with most people.
Well, I've seen tents in the morning, many a mornings, getting washed away by the tide.
Yeah.
They set them up too close. We have one tide a day here. They don't realize it.
Or they'll set them up and leave for
Yeah,
hours.
this is the next morning.
Right.
They've been set up all night there
Yeah.
sitting, and, now we got to leave no trace, but,
Yeah.
Yeah, they do set them up too close
Well,
sometimes.
it's just, I mean, that's my recommendation, is that
Okay.
we require tent permits
Let's-
for, like you said, if rental homes, and I have one,
Mm-hmm.
if I want my renters to be able to use tents, I would have to have a permit for them to display, to use the tent there. Now, and personally, I'm fine with them not having tents, because as soon as I say you can have tents on my rental property, then how can I say, I would not feel comfortable, because I believe in leading by example, not, I'm privileged, therefore. So I personally would say no tents on my property. However, you have umbrellas, chairs, all that good stuff.
I look
So
at these laws
that's
and,
just me.
and the enforceability of them and stuff, and the cost to enforce them. And I keep going back to the dogs on the beach, and you look at our last report, dogs in glass containers were the biggest contacts, and from my experience as a law-abiding, rule-obeying dog owner, I've been stopped many a times just to check my dog's registration number. And I assume that's a lot of the contacts are just stopping people. They automatically assume that if you have a dog that you're breaking the rules or something.
They're just checking.
But there's a lot of time being expended by stopping people and asking them for their permit number, and I don't think that that's really a problem, but we're spending a lot of time doing it, so maybe we should just not allow dogs on the beach. And I've been saying this, for 2 or 3 years now, that it's ridiculous that we got 11 code enforcement guys walking around chasing dogs on the beach.
Well, that's not all they're doing.
Well, but it was half of their time,
Well, there's no.
I mean, it just-
you'd have to weigh how much time they spend on a dog.
Well, I know personally from experience how much time they spent on me.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I was talking in a general sense of
Yeah.
how long does it take to check a permit versus, a glass
And,
infraction.
the
or
same
an
thing
infraction.
with the tents, everybody, you gotta have a special permit if
Yeah.
it's allowed, and it's just like, either allow them or don't allow them,
Okay. So right now, Lisa's suggested that we either ban tents and allow by permit. You've added in there, if we don't ban, then only allow them in the back section. So that's in our list. When we come back around to vote it, because our voting will be fairly quick, I'll go back through this list. And, there can be a motion made and a second and voted on, or if there's no motion and or no second, we move on to the next item. Okay,
Okay, let's move on.
all right.
You have any more?
Yeah, do you want me to do the whole document and be done?
Yeah, let's go ahead and
Sure,
get
might
you
as well.
through, and we'll go to the next person.
Okay, on the, when we go on to the section, it's on page 25. It includes the temporary beach storage boxes for vendors.
Okay, that'd be 2260.
Yes. Are they required to be white? I know a lot of them are white. Are they all required to be white?
Well, we don't have that listed as a rule, but we do have sizes listed. And I think that, Philip, can you answer that question?
I don't,
Uh,
I think in.
It's not a man,
I think in Rosemary, those guys should be able to answer. Y'all's are kind of a green color,
Yeah.
is that correct? Which I think blends in with the dune nicely. Most of
Okay.
ours are white. I think everyone paints it because it protects it, so
yeah,
I think that no one's got a pink or a blue box or anything crazy out there.
right.
Yeah. I just wondered if we wanted to have, specify that they had to be painted white or green in that case. I mean, but that's not a big deal. One of the things that happened this year was people had an awful lot of big floats and just an assortment of stuff. And because they see, and we've talked about this before, because they see that vendors can stack stuff at the toe of the dune, all of a sudden, everybody thinks they can stack everything they brought to the beach, including floats and all that, at the toe of the dune. I'm wondering if we could figure out a way to say that basically if you have the storage box, then that works to hide stuff, camouflage, whatever you want to call it. But I'd kind of like to see us say you can't just put a bunch of loose stuff at the toe of the dune. For instance, let's use my rental house, okay, because that way I can pick on me. if my guests have a bunch of floats and different things that they brought to the beach, I personally do not want them to just take all that stuff to the toe of the dune. I want them to take it back up to my house. Now, they don't have to take it upstairs or into the house, but there's almost always a place that's actually behind the dune that it can be situated where it's not in view of the public.
Mm-hmm.
And it is certainly a much nicer look than having these, literally, there were mountains in places, little mountains of pink flamingo floats and all kinds of things. And it made our beaches look tacky. It really made them look tacky. So I'd like for us to say that with beach toys, things like that, that they actually have to be out of view of the beach. Stored out of view of the beach, because those are lightweight. You know, with vendors, we're dealing with heavy stuff. I get it. They typically, the vendors are good about stacking them neatly, chaining them, that kind of stuff. And I realize that they've got a different situation. If it were up to me, which is not, I would have vendors all use boxes or literally put them behind the dunes too. But I don't know the whole 26 miles of the beach to know if that's even a viable alternative. You would know that better than I would. But certainly on private homes, there is no reason that I can imagine why we don't want to say you've got to have that stuff behind the dune and out of view so our beaches don't look tacky.
Okay. So it'd probably be more like prohibition of storage of beach-related equipment on the beach or on the dune system. Okay. One of our rules or practices we do is if the wherever it is on the beach, if they've made an attempt to get it up landward of the toe of the most permanent structure, so that'd be dune walkover, boardwalk, then we feel like they have met the leave no trace premise.
Yeah, because some people don't have enough dune to hide things, I guess.
They put them up under their dune walkover.
But,
right.
Put it under the dune, back under the dune walkover or something. Like I said, it was just, this is the worst year I've ever seen. For one thing, there were just a lot more of those humongous floats. And the funny thing is most people that tried to use them ended up dumping themselves out in the water. And so they just sat on the beach most of the time while, decorating the beach with flamingos and alligators and whatever else we had.
Are you looking at they try to get them off during the day, or because usually they don't?
Oh, no, I'm talking about at night. But at night, literally, there were places that some of the rental houses that I'm sure they hold a good number of people. They're not the 26 and 30 you hear about, but they would have a mound of these beach things, and they're just sitting there right in front of the dune, and they're lightweight. If we had a big wind come up, they'd be scattered around too, but it just looked really tacky this year. That the most I'd seen that kind of thing, of just loads of toys sitting out of there. But that's pretty much, I think I had, there was the tent and photographer thing, but that's already been addressed, and so I think that's it. Thank you.
Good list. You want to start on the end and move around, or?
Might as well. Philip?
I don't necessarily have direct things that I want to see changed. My main concern when we talk about all of this, and I don't know what everyone else is going to say at this table, but and I understand what Brian's saying, and I respect that. I'm not speaking from a vendor. I'm speaking on behalf of 80 to 90% of us that live in South Walton, rely on tourists for our income and for our family. And I think for us to rely on a governmental system to create more rules, more regulations, for safety, of course, that you got to do that. But all of these other things, if we make this 25, 26-page document now 36 pages, code enforcement now is just inundated with more and more and more and more things that they have to enforce. Even if it's clear as day, it just kind of seems crazy to me that now a vacation rental company is responsible for giving their renter a page of 722 rules. Is like the Old Testament in the Bible or something. And I know there's a fine balance between the two, and I just want us to keep that in mind as we talk about a lot of these things. I know that there will always be contention on the beach, trying to find harmony, but I don't know if more rules, more regulations, more specific detail is going to bring happiness more than, I'm afraid, a bunch of tourists are going to say, well, this year was a tent, the next year it's this, next year I'm too close to the water, next year it's my float, the next year this vendor can't do this. I just don't want it to be, we riddle someone's vacation, which is what in South Walton County we rely on to make a living, for them to say, I came to the beach as my happy place, and all it is rules, and I'm going to go somewhere else.
People come here, I hear you, I'm totally in your camp there. People come here because they like our way of life and our atmosphere here, and we're changing that so much. And we have to change it to some extent just to keep order, but we gotta be careful that we don't change it so much that we don't have a place that people wanna come to.
Yeah, and that's no disrespect at all to you, Miss Lisa, because I completely understand. It's a very fine balance, because a lot of the things you said I don't necessarily like either. But I know it's extremely difficult to enforce, and then when you do enforce that on an individual, and it's something that's not the end of the world, I'm very concerned that that will make them go somewhere else next year. And I don't know which, in all this document, I don't know which battle to fight or not fight. Are tents worth it? Are they not worth it? I don't know. But I just, that's the overlying theme that I want to kind of portray, in my opinion, which my opinion is often not right. So.
Yeah. All right, so your basic thing is that we ought to really consider paring down our rules and regulations to be more concise and only deal with true safety issues, and that the say aesthetic and comfortable related regulations should go away in favor of personal responsibility and all that.
Yeah, sure, but I'm not necessarily saying there's 15 things in this document that must be removed or else.
Yeah.
I'm mainly saying in addition to this document.
Yeah.
And there could be a few things in here that I'm not wild about that I think upset people, but I think that the way it is right now, tents is obviously a hot topic,
Right.
us having that last year, but excluding that, that's the only thing that really shocked people this year.
Yeah. I agree.
So I would say in addition to that, with new rules on tic-tac things,
Yeah.
I would be apprehensive to
I'm with you.
push those.
I understand what you're saying. Okay.
Thank you.
Brian? Nothing? Maurice?
Just a few follow-up comments, so thank you very much. Great stuff that you brought forth, Lisa, so thank you for your time and going through all that. Dog permits make sense to me. Not having been affected by that, we have a dog and we have a dog permit, but I can see that.
Do you go to the beach?
We do, I haven't been stopped yet, like I said in the last video.
Tell the guys
I
to
don't know if I
patrol
should be
Eastern
insulted or
Lake
not.
more.
Hang out with John.
Man, you need to come down to Dune Allen.
We'll do that.
Yeah,
We'll do that.
5:30 to 7:30 in
In
the morning.
fairness, my wife who's out there, she walks the dog and I guess they just won't.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
walking
If
the
you were,
dog,
yeah,
I
yeah.
thoroughly expect it. Changing glass containers to breakable, I see what you're saying, Philip, you can't just keep piling up regulations, but people always find a way around regulations, so maybe that is part of what we do when we send up the advice that we do to the TDC, and just keep, it's a work in progress, so I would support that. A no smoking ordinance makes total sense to me. I don't know if you could strictly enforce that, but why not? Secondhand smoke, I firmly believe, and I'm a former smoker, I believe does affect others, and there's a lot of kids out there on the beach as well. Sound amplification makes sense to me. I don't know if 15 feet is the right amount, but boy, living as close to the beach as we do, when you hear music on the beach, you're like, gee whiz. That is another reason people come here, is for the peace and the serenity. The only noise we want to hear is the crashing of the waves. Tent sizes, or tents or no tents, I guess what I'm hearing is maybe, do we want uniformity? I really don't have a position on tents or no tents, but I do have a position on uniformity. In all the years that I've been coming out here with my family, the more of the umbrellas that you see, it seems to bring more uniformity, if you will. I think it looks nicer. That's just a comment more than anything else. I believe that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
David?
Buckle up.
Okay. Let me get my glasses on.
I've given
Go
you all
ahead.
a copy of suggested
Oh,
language.
yeah, okay.
I am speaking on behalf of South Walton Fire District. So were we to vote on any of the things that I'm bringing on behalf of the district, I would recuse myself from the vote. I have Sammy Sanchez here to speak to some specific things. I'd like to go ahead and let him, because he's got stuff to do. So Sammy, if you'd like to speak to your specific issue.
Good morning, Board. Sammy Sanchez, Fire Marshal, South Walton Fire District. One item that that I keep having to answer over and over again is grilling on the beach. I'm not here to offer my personal opinion. If you can tell, I like to eat. So I'm just here to offer maybe some suggested language. I don't know that there's currently any language in the ordinance that speaks to grilling on the beach. The question we get all the time is, can I take my grill down there? I think what we've seen over the years is that I always call it the Regions Bank grill. It's that big, ginormous grill that gets towed behind a vehicle and gets taken down to Grayton. I know that's been going on for years, but then you get a customer that comes down and wants to take his Weber grill down there. Well, I personally don't have issues with people grilling on the beach. I do think that if we had some language set in place that could, it would do two things. It'd give my personnel some guidance when they call, and it would also give, I believe, code enforcement some guidance in what is allowed and what is not allowed. I took the liberty and I've created, I brought in some language that, again, I don't think, this is just my opinion as the fire marshal, if we allowed grills with a cooking surface of no larger than 225 square inches, basically what we're talking about is a tailgate type of grill, the little Coleman type grill that uses the 1 pound propane cylinder. I know there's a lot of people that like charcoal. I like charcoal as well. The problem with charcoal on the beach is, what do you do with it? And I think this is a compromise. I'm sure there's going to be folks that aren't going to like it, but to me, this is a compromise that we can still allow grilling on the beach if that's what you want to do. You want to get a sandy hamburger, that's fine. But we're limiting the size of the grill. It's not creating a hazard of any sort because it's a 1 pound propane cylinder. I think, again, just as the opinion of the fire marshal in the South Walton Fire District, I think if we allowed that, it would eliminate a lot of the issues that we have currently with grills with regards to, can I bring my big Coleman and the bag of charcoal, and then what am I going to do with it? And then I've got lighter fluid, and I've got to light it, and I've got a big open flame.
Now, they'd still be able to do that, but they'd have to get a burn permit or a fire permit, right?
Well,
If they wanted a bigger grill?
I think on the bigger grill, I mean, again, there is no language right now that I'm aware of. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, we've
Right. Language on
been
grills.
talking about this.
I don't know how you guys address that. I mean,
Before, any grill or anything required a fire permit, right?
well, the way the current language reads right now is that any open flame would require a
Yeah.
permit. And of course, I would have to get confirmation from my bosses, but I think when we presented this to them, there was no permit required for grilling on the beach.
Okay.
That is, again, let me confirm that.
It was my understanding that a permit was required for a larger grill.
That's the way it was set before, and, under this proposed language, I would not recommend, me personally, I would not recommend that we issue a
Allow
permit.
any grills larger than that,
Yes, sir.
even with a,
Well,
permit.
if you get a special event permit, that's kind of a different ballgame.
What
I'm
about a
talking
fire
about, you go
permit?
down there, you
Yeah, bonfire
you and
permit.
your kids go down there and your wife want to have a couple of hamburgers, grill some hot dogs. I don't necessarily think that requires a permit. But also don't necessarily think you need to take a ginormous grill down there to cook, half a dozen hot dogs.
I believe a lot of the people, and I guess some of the vendors could speak to this, is that the bonfire permits that are issued in the container and whatnot, some people do their s'mores in there.
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yeah, the bonfires that's kind of a separate issue. And I know that folks do go out there with the bonfires and grill some hot dogs over the top, and, you know, I'm not opposed to that either, but if you're going down there July 4th, middle of the day, you want to grill some hot dogs on the beach for your kids, I don't necessarily think that this language would interfere with that. If anything, I believe it would make it safer,
Yeah.
as opposed to what's currently occurring on the beach.
So I think what you're saying is add definition of grill, and then into the area under fires on the beach, it'd be listed that grills by type and size are allowed without permit. It's already stated in the special event permit that that is a vehicle to do things that aren't normally allowed by permit.
Correct.
Right.
And
By
it'd be
code.
similar to your generator rules,
Exactly.
where it's a specific size and.
Yeah. Okay.
Which would speak to about the 10 versus 20 pound.
Yeah, I believe that was discussed in the last meeting with the
Destination.
fire
was.
extinguishers.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We have that.
But that, again, that is, you know, that would be my recommendation. Even if we do nothing at all, I would like some specific guidance from the board, because it is a call that we field quite oftenly at the fire district. And I don't want to tell them they can't grill if they can, and I don't want to tell them, you know, that they can if they are not supposed to, so.
I think this is great, and I thank you for coming up with it. We've
Absolutely.
been talking about this before, you
Yes,
know,
sir.
a little tailgate grill if you need a bonfire permit for that. A lot of people do like to go down to Great.
Sure. And again, we're not opposed to it, but I think what we're seeing is the tourist that's come down here and he sees, okay, I'm just gonna take my grill down there and bag of charcoal and fire up some burgers, and I think that's where we're running into the issues from. And it would give, like I said, us and code enforcement at least some guidelines to go by and say that grill's too big or that grill is acceptable.
10-4.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sammy, if you'd also speak real quick to, I know it was brought up in the destination improvement, but part of our recommendations would be going from, per the generator requirements, going from a 20-pound class ABC to the 10-pound ABC.
Sure.
Extinguisher, if you just explain that to me.
When I reviewed that, and I know it's not in my purview, but when I reviewed that, the language with the generators, I noticed that in the language, it stated that you must have a 20-pound Class ABC extinguisher. The issue with the 20-pound ABC extinguisher is, one, is they're rather expensive, and they're very difficult to find. You just can't go to Home Depot or Lowe's, Walmart, Kmart, and pick up a 20-pounder. And I don't know if you folks have pictures up there of the difference between a 20-pounder.
Kind of.
They're here.
And I think what's going to end up happening is folks are not going to get a 20-pound ABC extinguisher. And it's not going to be because they didn't try, it's because they're difficult to obtain. You typically would have to go through an extinguishing company. Now, based on the size of the generator, I feel that a 10-pounder, which is in the middle between a 5-pound and a 20-pound, would be sufficient enough for your generator if you had a fire with it. And those are more accessible, they're readily accessible at your big box stores.
Okay.
Well, you're the authority if you think it'll put any fire out.
Yes,
I
sir.
think,
For the size generator that we're speaking of, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
sir. A 10-pound would be more than sufficient. It's just the 20 pounds, they're hard, they're heavy.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Does 2 10 pounds equal a 20 pound?
In a sense, yes, sir.
Yeah.
You're talking about the weight and,
I just wondering if the propellant or, I mean, if it's the same.
well, extinguishers are based on how much area they cover. So a 20-pounder will cover X amount of space, as a 10-pounder covers X amount, 5-pounder less
So,
and less.
okay.
But they're all used the same way. They all have the same ABC. They all have the same dry chemical. It's just the larger one covers a larger area. So I think with the generator here that we're speaking of, a 10-pounder would be more than sufficient to do the job.
Okay,
Again, those would be my recommendations on that.
very good, thank you.
Yes, sir.
One more.
Sure, one more.
It was also brought up at the destination improvement. The end time for the bonfire.
The what now?
Language considering adding an end time to the bonfire.
Correct.
Currently, there's no language that states what time a bonfire should end. Most
That's a good point. That is another question that we do receive quite often is, what time do I have to get off the beach? What time does my bonfire have to end? I did reach out to a few vendors in the area, and most vendors end their event, we'll just call it an event, between 10 and midnight. Most of them that I talked to, 10 or 11 is really the cutoff. There's a couple that extended a little further. Obviously, if you want to stay past 10, sometimes there's fees associated with that. I don't have a problem with that. I think if we did have an end time on the beach, again, that would give our folks some guidelines as well as code enforcement as to your bonfire has to end at this specific time. And in doing so, I think it'll assist in a couple of ways. One, it'll potentially reduce the number of times that fire pits are left on the beach that are discovered by turtle watch the next day that are still hot if we end it earlier. A lot of times if they're left on, right now if somebody goes out there and they want to have a bonfire, a private customer, he can have it till whenever. I don't know that there is a time that he's got to turn it off. He just has to move it off the beach by 8 o'clock. So if you get some college kids and they come down and they want to have an all-nighter on the beach, it could be 2 or 3 in the morning before they put it out. And the reality is it's probably still going to be hot at 8 o'clock in the morning. I think by reducing or having an end time, we could limit maybe some of that. And Philip, I know you deal in this quite a bit. So again, those would just be some suggestions. And also, if we eliminated earlier, we would encourage the customers to actually remove them before they left, so they're not actually on the beach at 8 in the morning.
So what you're saying is a end time to extinguish and to remove.
Well, I think the ordinance still reads that it has to be removed by 8 in the morning. I don't think we're addressing that at this point, but I think if we had an end time, it would. If I'm a customer and I come down and I have a bonfire, and I know I have to have it out by 11 o'clock, but I'm going to be out there till 1, that gives me 2 hours. It's probably cooled down. I'm not going to want to come back at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm probably just going to load it up and take it with me at that point. And I think that reduces the amount of bonfire pits that are left on the beach overnight by having an end time. But like I said, currently we don't have an end time, and
I think an end time is a good idea, but I think 10 o'clock is too early. In the summertime, it doesn't get dark till 8:30, 9 o'clock, and you don't have much bonfire time.
And again,
I don't know why anybody'd have a bonfire in the summer. But,
yeah, me neither, but that's our busiest
they
time,
do.
believe it or not.
Yeah.
I got my research, actually I notified about 5 vendors, and they all gave me a time between.
Yeah, but the vendors, they got a job to do. They want to get the job done and go home to their family and stuff.
What I did is I called some vendors that do quite a bit of these. They do a lot of these, and most of their time was between 10 and midnight. So I'm not saying 10's a good time. I'm not saying midnight's a good time. I just think that we really need to have some language in there that says this is the cutoff time.
Yeah, 11 I think would be okay, or midnight, But yeah, I agree with the
Do we need to vote on a
cutoff.
specific time as our recommendation to the BCC here? Do we need a
Yeah,
specific
we
time?
probably do.
Do we need to
Okay.
just?
I have it written down to include an end time. I have 3 different ones listed. We can modify that when we get ready to vote. Back
Okay.
to what we say it is.
Very good.
Okay.
Sammy, I think.
Is that it? All right. Any questions? I'd be more than happy to answer for you.
No, all good recommendations.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right.
Excuse me, on that, could we do something a little bit like the dog permitting, where maybe in the summer, there's a little bit later hours that would be
That's a good point,
permissible,
yeah.
and then during the winter, since it gets dark at 5
4:30,
o'clock or
yeah.
whatever, you could make it earlier, perhaps? It's just a thought.
That's reasonable.
If we're doing that for the dog permit.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
have an objection to that.
And I agree with what Mr. Sanchez says. I don't know really anyone that actually waits until 8 a.m. to remove it. And I agree, I understand the problem with that. I think something like, hey, it must be extinguished by midnight, removed by 1 a.m. or something like that's reasonable. I don't think there's any reason that it should stay on the beach overnight either.
I would recommend just setting a removal time, and then that way it would be on the beach vendor to figure out what is the appropriate extinguish time.
And then obviously that's the general public too,
Mm-hmm.
and both people are regulated.
Yeah.
I agree.
All right.
Do you have any more, David?
Yes, I do.
Okay, good.
All right. Just a couple more, actually.
Is this in your handout?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I'd like to move quickly here to, let's go to 2260 regarding the vendors. That should be pages 24 and 25. Be under 3C. So that would be on page 25, I believe. What we're addressing here, there's no, in the ordinance right now as it reads, it's from the lifeguard tower down to the water. As you know, we have the 15-foot emergency corridor at the toe of the dune, and we now have the 10-foot corridor for the lifeguard tower, from the lifeguard tower to the water. We'd simply like to amend the ordinance to reflect that both behind and in front of the lifeguard tower. We
Okay.
feel like that was just a simple omission, but
Okay.
it does have consequence.
Yep.
We'd also like to perhaps add sentence with language to include that beach chair companies may be fined for moving lifeguard towers to expand their confined areas, specifically to maximize their vendor zones. Blue Mountain Beach was a big issue for that this year and last, where I know the vendor here that I dealt with this on a direct level. He's on a private property, and he's doing his thing the way that he should. And of course, I have my guards. They need to be aware of what the boundaries are for the vendor zone, so that when they're coming out, they should recognize when something is off. But as we do rotate guards, and during the busiest time of the season, I have had other beach chair vendors who I don't need to name. They will come out and they will move the tower over 5 or 6 feet to maximize the vendor zone. And Blue Mountain Beach has been the main source of the problem, but it's been at other places too, so that they can get 1, 2, 3, 4 more sets in on their vendor zone. So
We'll include that under D10, where it establishes the vendor zones.
please.
Okay.
I provided 3 options for that, but I believe where he said at 10 on page 26 would be the appropriate place. And then a simple definition on section 22.02 on the very first page. Under aircraft, there's no mention. When I brought this up at the destination improvement meeting, Josh and both Brian spoke to this. We just want the county to be forward-thinking and kind of address the burgeoning use of drones, both for commercial purposes and for leisure activities. Is that if you read the ordinance now under aircraft, it's broad enough to include drones, but the term aircraft shall include ultralight aircraft and seaplanes. We feel like maybe you should just include drones. And if you want to be more elaborate, it's coming, it's happening, and we feel like that should be addressed. Now, the most important one that I'd like to address on behalf of South Walton Fire District would be at the very beginning of the packet that I gave you. Under the current waterways and beach activities ordinance, we recommend a change to language on page 10, section 2254, sub H, item 2. Under the authority to close or restrict the use of the beach and the water bodies, the Board of County Commissioners, Director of Emergency Operations, County Sheriff's Office shall have the authority. We'd like to ask that South Walton Fire District be included to give that authority. 2 main reasons. We are the subject, currently we hold the contract for beach safety. That's always subject to change. But as we are the subject matter experts and we do declare the water closed, we feel it's important to be included in the ordinance. But moreover, Chief Talbert spoke to the Destination Improvement Committee, and I agree that statutorily the state legislature promulgated specific authority to the South Walton Fire District to provide fire and rescue protection to the 84 square miles of Walton County from county line east to west, from the bay to the Gulf of Mexico, to include the beaches. So the recommended change to page 10, section 2254H sub 2 would just simply include the South Walton Fire District.
Seems like that was an oversight. I mean, y'all should have been included anyway.
As I understand it, Stan Sunday and the county administrator or some people at the Board of County Commissioners had some objection due to the fact that the South Walton Fire District is a contractor to the TDC for the beach safety. But we say it's a 2-pronged argument that as long as we have the beach safety, we feel like as the subject matter experts, we should be included in the ordinance. Moreover, statutorily, we do still have the authority from the state legislature, and we feel like that should just be included in the ordinance language. And that, my good people, is all I have.
Thank you, David.
Good, David.
I had a couple of things. One, I wanted to talk about the weddings. Is it 50 people or 35 did we drop it to
30 people for a
30
special
people
event.
for special events?
Is it one of the triggers for a special event?
Yeah. And we were talking in the meeting last week that requiring all weddings to have a event coordinator or vendor. I don't think we should for the ones under 35. People, particularly residents, I mean, people that live here ought to be able to have a wedding on the beach if they're, I mean, property owner or resident or whatever. They are more accountable. I understand it's, problem when the bride from Atlanta wants to pull her permit and she runs off on her honeymoon and is not accountable for what happened down there. But I think the residents here, they can be more accountable. And so just seems to me that, to charge, to have an event planner or whatever, charge somebody for that they could set up their own chairs and do their own thing. They should be able to.
All right. I would say that, a statement of not changing the code really doesn't require anything. See what I'm saying?
Or if the people, from out of town want to do it, have them post a bond or deposit or something to just ensure that they're going to do what they're supposed to do and clean it up. Just some way to make them accountable. Like I say, I think the residents here, we can make them accountable. If they don't do it, then they'll never get another permit, or we can charge them, or I don't know. And the ones that take a deposit, if they don't clean it up, well, that just sparks a new industry. We'll have people going out to clean up the wedding venues and,
So you think a deposit or some form of bond?
Yeah.
Deposit or bond, this is a section 2257 for events that are not, or special event permits that are not issued to a non-permitted vendor.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're all, this whole thing of vending, I guess it started with the beach chair vendors and everything. And, but it's just grown so much, to everything that, is producing income is vending. And, of course, it came up, the photographers, they're vendors. And so there's going to be different permits and different fees for the photographers. Well, I mean, to me, people are looking at those photographs saying, where's that? So, well, I want to go there. I mean, is that advertising? How much do we charge the vendors? What are they doing for us? I think everybody's seen the video, the Luke Bryant video, under the old pier. How much do we charge him for doing a video on the beach? That's pretty big.
You're talking about Camp Helen?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Bay County.
Is the pier's on Camp?
Yeah, it's in Bay County.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I always thought Camp Helen was Walton County.
Nope.
Okay. But there again, I mean, what do we charge and how much are we getting back for it?
Well, I don't think our fees are based on return on investment. I think they're, more usage fees to help cure a congestion problem. See what I'm saying? So I understand your point about receiving some benefit from it, but the other thing is that, as in all permits required for activities, one industry quickly points fingers at other industries that aren't being treated the same, or maybe receiving undue help, and that was really the case. And before, service type vendors that didn't have too much of an impact on beach resources simply weren't enforced. The code was always there. This is not a new code. It was just a new enforcement practice. And it was brought on by, well, the definition says service or goods for a fee. They're obviously doing that, then they should be held to the same standard that we're held to. See what I'm saying?
Are we charging, are we making the boat captains get vendor licenses?
They do. They're already required
They
to do
are
that.
getting vendor licenses?
Yep, they are. And they actually have a whole set of the code that is actually written specifically for them. And they're actually under a cap. There's only so many allowed. But we already have in the notes or in previous meetings of establishing what we call a service type vendor. So it's a person that doesn't offer a good that takes up space, creates congestion. And I believe that'll carry on through with, a fee that is,
Aren't they all service vendors?
well, like I say, they are, but they don't put a good on the beach.
Okay.
And so, a service vendor versus, I don't know what the other word would be, but, like a beach equipment vendor, puts items on public beach, take up space.
Okay.
A person that is offering a service, like a yoga teacher or maybe yoga's not the best thing, but probably so, a yoga photographer, stuff like that, they're down there short amount of time typically, not, taking up a lot of beach space for the whole day. So I think it makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
That's all. Anybody else here have anything?
I had a couple questions for Mr. David real quick. On the lifeguard stands, are those set up dead center of kind of the vending, non-vending line?
It's supposed to be, yeah.
So that's how they are. And then what would you say is the reason that you wouldn't want any chairs behind? Is it a safety issue?
Yeah, actually, when we do get responses that are outside, because we have our primary zone, which is the actual property lines, then you have your secondary zone and your tertiary zone. A large number of our medical and water rescue calls happen outside of our primary zone. And so at most towers, with the exception of one, we have rovers. And we park the rovers next to or behind them. And when we gotta boogie, get out and get over, it's when people are camping in right on us, it's actually been quite an issue.
Makes sense. And then with the general public, are they required to not be in the 10-foot corridor?
Yes.
Cool.
Hurt some feelings, but most people are actually pretty cool about it once you explain to them why.
Okay.
So
And how does that affect fishermen?
it doesn't. Well, once they're at the water's edge and they want to fish, we've gotten very good at being diplomatic and appealing to their sense of.
But what do you do? I mean, set your poles up there and just sit your chair back 10 feet, or?
You mean fishermen who want to set up right in front of our lifeguard stand?
No, I'm talking about sending the people up by the shoreline.
Fishermen? You said, I'm not sure what you're asking here.
This is a 10-foot corridor in line
Yeah.
with the,
Oh, out perpendicular. I'm talking about parallel.
No.
this is from dune to water's edge, is what he's asking.
So here's my tower.
I got it.
Yeah. Behind.
So if you're fishing behind the lifeguard
I'm
station.
talking about the parallel.
Yeah.
You're talking about
Corridor.
the 15-foot
Yeah.
water's edge.
Yeah.
No, we don't. That's not us.
Addresses beach equipment. The 15-foot zone does.
Is that it? Philip? Any more?
No, sir.
Okay. Public? You want to come up to the?
If you'll state your name for the record, we'd appreciate it.
Hello, I'm Lanny Smith, Rosemary Beach Beach Operations Manager. Thanks for letting us come here today. Got a quick question for Fire District in reference to the lifeguard stands. We do have a contract with you guys, and it's worked out great, and thanks for helping us get that done. We work with the lifeguards rather well. If they need anything, we need anything. It's a mutual deal. My concern is, I'm not sure what happened to spur the don't move the lifeguard stand issue. I don't think it was with us.
No, it wasn't.
Okay, my question is, we have them in our, at one of our walkovers at two different locations. There's times we have weddings on the beach, and so we have coordinated with the individual lifeguard to help move the stand over, whatnot. Would that still be allowable?
Absolutely. You guys are on private property. It's your resort.
Okay.
With that, what I'm speaking to is on the vendor zones, on the regional beach access points.
Okay.
That's where we have the problem.
All right, great, thank you.
Anybody else?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Carolyn Northcutt, resident of Walton County for 17 years and weddings manager at Seascape Resort. I'd like to hear what Philip said about minimizing the rules and regulations. When I first came here, I know that no glass on the beach, and the flag system. That was important. It was posted. There was no reason not to know it. Now it seems like there's lots more of rules and regulations, tents on the beach, which does distract from when I go to the beach, when I have a day off from weddings. I like to sit on the beach quietly, listen to the waves, not music, 15 feet away. 15 feet away, if you've got your country music going, I leave the beach. I'd rather go home, sit in my backyard, and have peace and quiet. 15 feet doesn't seem long enough. The reason, I guess, I would like things addressed is public beach versus private beach. Public beach is for all of us to go, and our tourists to go and enjoy. If you want to have a wedding there, then yes, there should be some rules. If you have a private beach, which some resorts, my resort has a private beach, we did not have to buy a permit for weddings. Then we had to buy a $50 permit. Now we have to pay $1,000. Now we also are told no signs on the beach, so we can't reserve the area of our beach. And we are told we can only set up 1 hour before. I have some wonderful vendors who, if we really do stick to the 1 hour before, they may have to drop certain resorts because they can't set up everywhere in 1 hour. That's just ridiculous, can't do that. So if it's a private beach, and I say it's fine, you can set up 3 or 4 hours, 5 hours before if you like, because you've got other things to do at the public beach where there is one wedding at this public beach access, then they should be allowed to do that. It just seems like there should be rules for private versus public. I compare it to, I want to go sit in my front garden, my front yard. You can, but now you're going to pay this much money to do that, Carolyn. And you know what? You can only do it at this time. So if it's a private beach, why are there so many rules and regulations? If it's a public beach, thank you very much for making these rules and regulations, because I want to go on my off time as our tourists who we want to come. We want them to enjoy. We don't want them to think, like it was said, well, gosh, I think I may go to Myrtle Beach, which one lady on our beach did tell me this summer. She said, you know, we go to Myrtle Beach, we come here. I think we're just going to go to Myrtle Beach from now on because the beach used to be cleaned here. When I first came 17 years ago, it seemed every morning it was cleaned. It was combed, it was cleaned. It's not anymore. There's trash. And the last meeting, all the vendors said, which I do as well, I go out before my wedding and pick up trash. You know, nobody else does it. So if we are, you know, putting fees into force, yes, there should be less fees because $750 is a lot for vendors to pay. $1,000 is a lot when we have our own beach. I don't know why we're paying anything. But if we're going to enforce it, where's the money going? Obviously to pay code enforcement people who are doing a good job by doing what they should be doing to an extent. But maybe some of that money could be going to clean the beach as well. So our tourists do come and just say, you know what, there are some rules, the glass, the flags, thank you for putting the flags out, that we're doing that to protect our tourists. But keep it to a minimum. Tents, okay, I don't really know why anyone wants to bring a big tent to a beach, but yeah, maybe back, not at all or back. Smoking is littering. I don't smoke, I hate smoking. If I see someone throw a cigarette out of the car, that is littering. They should be stopped and given a ticket. If they leave cigarette butts on the beach, that's littering. You shouldn't do that. You should clean up after yourselves. So, thank you.
We all think that too, but unfortunately, we're getting some people that come down and think they're paying so much that they're paying for somebody else to clean up their mess.
Yeah.
And that they're not very good stewards of the beach. Most of us that walk the beach, we walk with a bag that pick up all the trash.
I mean, picking up cigarette butts that people had in their mouth, who wants to do that? Why should we?
John, I'd like to address a few of those comments. Carolyn, a few things. Seascape, right?
Right.
All right. You have an annual permit, is that correct?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
we also have a deed that shows it's our beach.
Right.
So we didn't used to have a permit.
Yeah. So there's provisions in the code right now that you can get an annual permit, cost you $1,000. You can have as many weddings as you'd like. All we ask is that you provide us a list so that when we're coming down the beach in the evening or the afternoon, and we encounter a specific special event you're having, we understand that it's permitted and all that. Part of the reason that is so that other people, because the beach in front of your place actually has a easement associated with it for general public use. But we require anybody else that wants to have a wedding on there or a special event has to have your permission. But that's the main reason why we want to know
Right.
if it's your event or not your event, so that we can enforce the ones that are not your event.
Which is great, we appreciate that,
Yeah.
because I've had some code enforcement saying, so you're
Yeah.
with Seascape? Yes, okay, but just check in to make sure it's not, Mary Jean's wedding, no, that's just.
Exactly,
checking.
right.
Because some people say, like, we're staying here, we thought we could just use your beach. No, because that's not fair. If
Right.
another bride has booked a year ahead of time, and, taken our services as coordination and the vendors that we use and everything, then why should this other person not pay?
Right.
But the main thing is, like I say, it is, basically a private beach. So, the code enforcement last week, stopped and asked, and where's your permit? Well, I was actually, it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was doing a site visit for my October wedding.
Yes, ma'am.
So I had my clipboard with her information. My other clipboard was back at the office for the wedding that day, and he goes, well, where's your permit? Do you want me to run back to the beach and get it? Should I pay on the phone? He said, no. What time is the wedding? You're only allowed to set up 1 hour before.
Okay.
Well,
Those are some operational issues you're explaining right there that I can correct internally.
lovely.
Okay? All right, the other issue on code enforcement are the fees for special events or the vendor fees. Goes into a general fund. Beach code enforcement, beach maintenance, complete beach operations is completely funded by bed tax collections. Okay? So these fees that are usage fees and permit processing fees go into Walton County's general fund, and then it's used for it's a different list of items. But all of our operations are bed tax collection funded. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
My name is Chuck Lawson. I'm a professional musician, and I'm bringing more wedding information to you guys. I wanted to keep it in the circuit here with what Carolyn said. Thank you for letting me speak today. This is like my first time to ever get to do something like this, so bear with me. I want to present a side that maybe is not that obvious to see. Vendors like myself, wedding officiants, musicians, in some instances, photographers, I want to make it aware that in Walton County, I may do 4 or 5 weddings, or 8 a year, versus in the 750, I think we've already addressed this earlier, the 750 was just a unrealistic fee to charge a vendor that uses the beach 3 or 4 times a year for 20 minutes or 30 minutes at a time. Some photographers only do it a few times in Walton County, and they're going to Bay and Okaloosa and all that. So just to be aware that there is a group of us that aren't having the same kind of impact that beach vendors doing chairs and jet ski rentals every day are on the beach. We're there 3 or 4 times a year. I do understand the point of congestion he was talking about, and also the impact on the beach. You would want someone like me on the beach because I care. I love this place, and I'm one of the guys that walks down there with a bag and picks up every time I go to the beach, especially on my days off, to clean up the mess that other idiots leave. But we're all very conscientious, most of us, the ones that I know, the vendors that I'm speaking of right now, in addition to myself, we're all very conscientious of the beach and want it to be left in the same condition that we found it or better. I want to caution you all also on having wedding planners being required. 75% plus of the brides that I book with do not have a wedding coordinator. Guess who gets to be the wedding coordinator?
How many people in those weddings would you estimate?
My area, and I just said this last night to a bride calling me saying that it's a small wedding, we only have 50 people. That's the average. Most of my weddings are between 40 and 60 people. Now, there's some I've done that were 250, but a lot of times that the destination wedding in my world is about 50 to 60 people. So I want to caution when you make your decisions on thinking that almost all the brides have wedding coordinators. I wish they did, because I catch grief all the time that you're not charging for that, yet you're giving that service, but you got to do what you got to do to make the bride happy to be here. And this, in addition to what I had here, I wanted to address something that you said regarding what are you getting for it, with photographers taking pictures of our pretty beaches, or me coming down with my steel drums and playing. The impact that we have. They find us online and go, I want to do that. I want Chuck to play the steel drums at my wedding. This is going to be magic. I want these pictures. I want to be there. We are one of the best advertisers for tourism here because of what we offer and the level that we offer it at. Just throwing that out there. I mentioned this at our meeting last week, that I think that having all vendors brought up to speed with a workshop on what to do and not to do on the beach is a really good idea, and find some way of permitting us, but not, the 750 is really, it is unrealistic, and I do agree with finding a service permit idea. You asked me what I thought. To me, a permit is $35. And we are charging brides and people having events on the beach a graded scale. I think they should pay the fee, the usage fee, not burden the folks that are being the reason they come here and having the bed tax on them for staying here. That's just my opinion.
Well, didn't you say under a special event last week that all the vendors under that special event are allowed? I mean,
Yes,
under one permit?
Yes, what I call subcontractor vendors operating under a permitted vendor special event permit. Okay, so.
So if you're working for a vendor, you're okay, but if you're working for a
If I work with Carolyn,
yeah.
well, she's on private property, but let's say a wedding coordinator, but they have to have me listed on there as,
Right.
and that is okay. But again, 75% don't do that. They don't have wedding coordinators. Just saying. Also, something else to think about is, when I go to weddings, a lot of them are at private houses. I go out on the beach, I do the ceremony, and I come back and I do the reception. Parking, I agree, got to do something about the parking. I mean, I live here. I would really just grate my nerves to be living down the street and cars are everywhere. We already have ordinances and codes in place regarding parking. I don't want to keep over-regulating to try to think that we're addressing the issue when we need to get,
I kind of feel the same way. If somebody has a wedding at their house in a neighborhood, any subdivision or anything, there's going to be a parking issue. And the neighbors are going to, there's going to be an issue. It doesn't have to be on the beach.
But there have been some houses, and the one I'm thinking of is in actually Okaloosa County, that they say you must have a service bringing folks to here and dropping them off. You cannot park here. And they do it. They're basically forced to do that. And some type of address of that way may help alleviate, because I do understand. I mean, it can be intrusive and annoying to folks that live in the area or are visiting in the area, and they can't get in their parking spot because there's 40 cars at a wedding. I do understand that, but again, I caution to keep over-regulating rather than enforcing what we already have on the books. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Aren't all weddings on the beach, regardless of whether there's a wedding planner, don't they have to get a permit?
If they're on public beach.
That's what I thought. So why doesn't that cover him that way, for
The
instance?
special event permit.
It's not even, I don't know what it is. Is it considered a special event when the bride themselves gets it?
Right,
It still
special
is?
event permit.
So really, anything, and even if somebody is a beachfront owner and they have a wedding on their own property, don't they still have to get some notification or something?
Depending on what triggers, that they hit. So more than 30 people, if they're having lighting, during turtle season, anything that's not, or that would be against code, would require them to get a special event permit if they wanted to do that. The reason is we started enforcing it is because of the lack of accountability on special event permits that are pulled by non-permitted vendors, i.e. a bride.
Yeah.
What happens is then there's 3 or 4 different vendors that are providing a service on that beach, and they may or may not. I'm not accusing anybody of not doing what is expected. But the non-compliant issues we were encountering was because nobody was held accountable. You know, chairs and tables left on the beach, arbors left on the beach, trash, you know, left on the beach. Just, you know, whatever else is associated. And then when we go back to it, all we had was a special event permit to go back on the, you know, whatever the situation was. And at that point, you know, that the bride is, you know, typically not around. And
So I think we're adding like several layers of permits. You know, that special event permit should handle all the vendors. If they put a list of the vendors they're gonna have on that, I mean, that should do it. And if we charge a deposit or something for the out-of-town people.
We actually have in the code some verbiage that says, if a special event on behalf of for a vendor to organize or promote a conduct or conduct a special event on the behalf of a client without being listed on the permit application, unlawful to do so. So, in other words, the county commission last year did not want to go as far as to say you have to be a permitted vendor to pull a special event permit. What they did say is that if you do have a person conducting that for you, they have to be listed. And so that would cover the rest of those vendors. You know, what we're trying to do, once again, is develop accountability for people that are doing, you know, commercial enterprise on the beach, be it public and or private. Once again, the people that have resort communities, privately held beach, do a good job of that themselves. We don't have much issues with those areas. It's the public beach areas that we have issue with. And so we're trying to get that to...
Well, I mean, along that, the accountability, you know, if the bride's accountable, I mean, he's a musician. What's he got to be accountable for? You know, the photographer, what do they have to be accountable for? The preacher, you know, what, now, I mean, it just doesn't seem like they have to be accountable for
Well, but they're covered, right? Isn't that what I'm hearing you saying? That
No, it goes back to other industries that work on the beach that are held to a specific section of the code. They say that person is doing exactly what I'm doing, and why aren't they held to the same standards of the code?
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Mr. Henderson, I may interject here. I want to make sure that I would love it if a bride pulled the permit, or whatever event I'm doing, they pull the permit and I'm listed as one of their vendors and I'm under it. But right now what it has to read is a permitted vendor, like a wedding coordinator.
It's over 30 people.
Right, a wedding vendor, a coordinator has to do it. I have to go under them, but I'm not covered under the bride's permit. It has been separate during code
Do
enforcement.
you have to have a vendor, period, even if it's less than 30 people?
It's on public beach.
I think that's wrong.
The reason is so we don't have more than one wedding at any given public beach access.
But that doesn't mean a vendor has to do it. I mean, a special event permit would,
They don't.
you can only allow one special event permit per beach access, or how many?
One.
But that doesn't mean they have to be a vendor though, right? I mean,
Right now,
why would they
right
have
now,
to-
you do not have to be a permitted vendor to pull a special event permit. If you are a person, an individual, pulling a special event permit, and you have a commercial enterprise, wedding event planner, special event planner, conducting the program for you, they have to be listed on your permit. And the reason-
But you're saying if it's less than 30 people on public beach, they don't have to be a vendor to pull the special event permit.
Doesn't matter the size.
Anybody can.
I thought over 30 people, a vendor has to pull the.
No.
but,
What are we just talking about?
I'm
I
not
mean,
sure.
I'm totally confused.
yeah, I'm not sure I understand it. So
Yeah.
let's
Okay,
pretend.
let's start from the front.
Okay, let's
Okay.
pretend I'm a bride, okay? And I don't want to hire an event coordinator. I just want to go down to the beach and I want to have a musician and a photographer
And an officiant,
Pardon me?
and someone to marry.
Well,
An officiant.
preferably, yeah.
You always have
If
to
you're
have
going
that.
to get married, that's a good thing. And so very simple and virtually no stuff, if you will, as far as, structures.
Correct.
Do I or do I not have to pull a permit?
If you're on a public beach access, you have to pull a permit. special event permit.
Right, and if you're on a private beach, you have to have the owner approval, correct?
If-
It either has to be your own property or you have to have the owner approval. So
If it-
either
but once
way,
again, if
though,
it-
you have to pull a permit if you're gonna have these kind of things going on down on the beach. So,
If it's items, so what it was, when I say start back from the front, let's start back on what causes, what is the cause for a special event permit? Okay, so we gotta understand different beach relationship, owner relationship, and then the other triggers, all right? So, if you're having a wedding on, or a special event on a public beach access, requires a special event permit. And the reason is to not have too many people or too many events on one particular beach access.
right.
All right, goes back, that's, the other thing is to understand that a lot of these codes were written when there were different pressures on the beach that would be cause for regulation. All right, other reasons for a permit is if you're gonna do something out, or number of people, 30 people, public or private. If you're gonna do something that is not normally allowed by code, public or private, okay? So there's many things that aren't allowed by code. Some of them are time dependent, you know, as in turtle season, lighting, stuff like that. So those are the things that require you to get a special event permit. And so, once again, that it goes back to, we have a operating procedure that says if a permitted vendor has pulled a special event permit, then they can list the other people that are going to be providing a subcontractor service to them.
Right.
And therefore, that person doesn't have to be permitted. If it's a bride that is not a permitted vendor, then they have invited people down to the beach that are offering a service or a good for a fee. And therefore, they now follow, or they fall under the definition of a vendor.
They do or do not.
They do.
Okay, well,
Okay,
and that's
and
what I'm
so-
saying. So I
so-
have to get one, right? In my example. But if I get one, can't I put him and the officiant
If you're a
and,
permitted vendor.
but, so.
No.
Because I am a permitted vendor at that point, because I got a
No,
special.
you have to be a permitted vendor.
Oh.
Just
Yeah,
getting
so-
your special event permit
so-
doesn't make you
Well,
a
why
vendor.
don't we just make it then where if somebody, like the bride, pulls the special permit, that she can then list under her, you know, these people that she's gonna have part of it, and of course
We
it'd still
could.
tie
We-
into
we-
the
we could.
number.
I
I
think
mean,
it's a-
that should be like a temporary vendor license
We could.
under her special event permit.
We could, and I think that it should coincide with a deposit or a
Yeah,
bond on
yeah.
public beach.
Right, and what someone like Mr. Lawson could do is say to the bride, ma'am, if you don't have your special permit for this, you need to go get one so I can entertain at your venue.
Yep.
You know, I
Exactly.
mean,
I might suggest the consideration that when these brides come to Walton County and want to do their wedding or event on the beach and have vendors come in, that they, because of our concern about knowing what to do and not to do on the beach, that they be required to use permitted vendors. The $750 permit that exists now is, again, I want to state, is unrealistic for someone that does 4 or 5 weddings a year on the beach. You know, that's how much I would make from the wedding, all 5 of them. So, you know, I mean, it's not a realistic number, but of course, we've said that before. There are brides that come down, and Uncle Joe shoots the pictures, my brother does the music, Uncle Bob does the marrying because he got the Universal Church ordination, you know, and they don't have any hired vendors. That I see that happen, or they'll hire one, me. But usually there are that, and I don't know if we want to get into that. That is a conundrum with what do you do about the folks that want to bring family members to do everything. But again, if we're going to make concern about our beach and the treatment of it, we may need to require that they utilize some form of permitted vendor as well. I would like to see that we fall under the permit that the bride pulls rather than the permit that's under a wedding coordinator, because, hey, I paid my money to be a wedding coordinator and got my vendor fee, and this guy's going to come under me for nothing. Or I need a little money from you, Chuck, to, you know, do that. So, I mean, we get into that issue as well. I just think we
Well-
need some type of service permit allowance.
It's all gonna be passed to the bride, I mean, all the fees.
Yeah, I couldn't pass $750 a year to the, I mean, that would be.
Well, it wouldn't make sense to have three $750 permits under either, but it makes all the sense. You wouldn't
think we
be
have-
there if it weren't for the bride, the officiant wouldn't, and so on.
Right, I think we've made,
Yeah.
listed items here, or made provisions that would resolve this particular issue, not
Yeah.
Chuck's issue, but the issue of what is considered the sub-vendor, subcontractor to the main event.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Chuck. Anybody else? Come on up.
My name's Gary Seraphin, and I own Emerald Coast Catering. And this will be our 14th year in business. And I'd like to reiterate some of the things Chuck said. The brides that we get are 28 to 35 years old, and they're coming down here to save money so they don't have to do country club weddings. So what he said is really true. There are about 50 people average in our parties. And I think the most important point that I'd like to make is that they come in April, May, June, and September, October, November. And so they're bringing that business in somewhat off months. Summer's too hot, houses are weekly rentals. So I think we need to really appreciate when are they here and what business they're bringing.
Okay.
Okay? Thanks.
Anybody else want to say anything? Come on up.
Hello, Marie DiGiovine. I'm a wedding officiant. For those of you that don't know what that is, I'm actually the lady that conducts the ceremony, pronounces the couple husband and wife, signs off on the marriage license. Justice of the peace, old-fashioned justice of the peace. I kept hearing today and last week, public beach, public beach, public beach. I don't know if you're aware of this. I had sent a letter in July to Tricia Goff asking her to explain to me what is required as a beach vendor. And she went in to explain to me the fee of $750, ... I'm reading it right now, but I have it here in writing from her. The rules do apply to both private and public beach access across Walton County. If a bride or groom pull a special event permit and they are paying you for your service, yes, you would need to have a wedding vending permit. If you are working as a subcontractor under another vendor, such as a wedding planner or resort, you could work under the umbrella of their special event permit. But you would have to be listed. In this case, you would not need a beach vending permit. So there's some things there that you can think about, but public and private. Nobody's mentioning private, it just seems like you're talking about public, but I was told private as well. Guys, I have turned away so much business this summer because I had brides renting houses and asked me to officiate on their private property, and I said, no, I can't. I don't have a permit. So can we, if you can please clarify that? Mm-hmm. And the only other thing I want to say is, the wedding business, and Okaloosa County is having this issue as well. I don't think you people as locals realize how much money is brought in here by the wedding business. I don't know how accurate this statistic is, but somebody told me that between, I think, 2000 or in the year 2013 or 2014, between Pensacola and Panama City Beach, there were 33,000 weddings here. Most of them, I'm going to say, were on the beach or on, somewhere, a private house or whatever, from a tourist. Our tourists that come down here for the week to have a wedding, they're spending bed tax, they're going out to dinner, They're going to our boutiques, they're seeing movies, they're supporting our local entertainment, they're dining out, whatever. They're bringing in a lot of money. And remember, you all advertised. BP gave us money. We advertised. My family in New Jersey is seeing Come to Destin. You know, that never happened years ago. So we asked for the tourism, we asked for the business, and we got it. And look what it's created. So all I ask is that when you're making the new rules, regulations, ordinances, be careful, because it's going to hit your pocketbook. You know, just be, there has to be a medium. So just, that's all I ask. Don't do too much over-regulating. Do what you got to do, but keep in mind, this is our money, everybody. This is how we're feeding ourselves and our family. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'll give her a go. Hi, guys. My name's Patricia. I own It's a Perfect Day Weddings, and I do weddings for a lot of the resorts, and like at the Hilton, we do weddings at the Hilton, at Seascape, at Embassy, at Sandestin, and the rules are always different for each resort. And I know that's really bizarre for you guys to hear, but I'm on the beach every single weekend, and it's different. When I'm at the Hilton, it's way different than when I'm at the Seascape. Completely different.
When you say rules, do you mean the resort?
Not the resort rules. No, the rules that are enforced by the code enforcement guys. I never see them at the Hilton. Never. They don't ask for a permit. They don't give me a hard time about setting up at 12 o'clock. Never. Now, if I'm at Seascape, I see them every single week. They ask for my permit. They ask for Seascape's permit. And they give us a hard time about this last weekend. Carolyn spoke to you guys about them wanting to know why we were setting up at 1 o'clock, you know, and he was like, well, you know, it's against the rules, but I'm almost off duty, so you're going to have to deal with the next guy that comes in. I just want to know why the rules are different depending on which part of the beach that you're on.
Okay. The beach at Seascape actually has a easement for general public use. And so, once again, as I explained earlier, one of the main reasons you get more interaction there is we want to make sure that we're preserving Seascape's property ownership rights as to other people not having weddings there.
Sure, and I understand that. You know, and we're always very mindful about where we set up. You know, we never interfere with the people that are down next to the water. We always set up midway, always. We try to be very respectful of the code enforcement guys. But sometimes they're so frustrating because you'll ask them a question and they'll say, I'm not really sure. You know, maybe a little bit better education for them, because I know the rules, you know, and I try to abide by the rules, but that's not always the case.
Okay.
My other question is have any of you fine people ever set up for a wedding on the beach?
Have we ever fined people?
Have you ever set up a wedding on the beach? Do you realize how long it takes to actually set up a wedding? I know that we have an hour before wedding time to set up. When I'm carrying 300 chairs on the beach, I'm never going to be able to do it in an hour. It's just not feasible. We have guests start coming in 45 minutes prior to wedding time, so that leaves us 15 minutes. 15 minutes to put up chairs, an arbor, put flowers out, you know, sweep the sand. I mean, I think that an hour is just not doable.
Yeah, that hour comes into play on, like, once again, we have to recognize that some codes were written many years ago and were addressing a particular behavior then and are geared to certain or particular beach areas. So that 1 hour rule was associated with what used to be the Sunset Beach wedding that lasted 30 minutes and only included 10 or 20 chairs and maybe a simple arbor. And so what I have experienced, though, is the people in my office that do the special event permitting, understanding that events on resort communities do take longer to set up. And I mean, I don't have the evidence in front of me, but it is my understanding that they do allow, in other words, they just set the actual start time of the wedding is not when the officiant starts giving the ceremony, but rather what would be an appropriate time for the special event coordinator to start setting up the wedding.
Sure.
And so they give it the time before that, appropriate amount of time, say, you say it's going to take 4 hours for me to set up, wedding's at 5 o'clock, then that permit would say from 12 p.m. to whatever you
Right.
think the thing is going to last. So, I believe those areas are being addressed.
Okay, well, and they may be, but me being on the ground, I'm the one that gets the brunt of the code enforcement men. I mean, like, again, last week saying,
Yeah.
do you want us to, he said that I could take my chairs and move them back up and put them at the edge of the dunes. And then
Okay.
I could put them on an hour before.
Okay.
I mean,
Well, there's a few things I would recommend. Is make sure that when you're pulling a special event permit for that particular beach, okay, because once again, that seascape, the beach and seascape does have some particularness to it. Just make sure the special event permit administrator understands that you're going to need a certain amount of time. And so if your wedding's at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, my wedding's going to start at 2 o'clock. Me starting to set my stuff up. So I need an hour before that to coordinate my materials. What we were trying to counteract with that is that on the permit application, it used to say 8 a.m. And so we would have people setting up wedding events at 8 a.m. And the reason is to reserve a section of the beach.
sure.
Mainly on public beach. Once again, the beaches that are associated with resort communities they coordinate that fine themselves. That beach at Seascape does have, like I say, that general easement or easement for general public use, and it was associated with its original development order. And so that's why there is, like I say, more activity and all that. As far as different rules and or code enforcement officers expressing one, I don't know, or different ones differently, I'll address that. We actually have in-service training once a week, typically about 2.5, 3 hours, and we take specific sections of the code and go over it to make sure we are all enforcing it uniformly. Opportunity for officers to explain what they're experiencing on the beach as far as what areas of the beach, what magnitude of the problem, what particular category, of the code. And the effort in that is to get that uniformity in enforcement action. Because I can imagine it'd be very frustrating being on the east end of the beach and being told one thing, and then on the west end being told something different.
Well, and it is usually by the same code enforcement guy.
See, I found that I just don't understand.
Yeah.
Because unless there is some differences with beach relationship. Okay, when I say relationship, the western end of the beach has an erosion control line from beach renourishment that changes ownership relationship. We have different property relationships on the east end of the beach with main high water line,
Sure.
Public beach, seaward of private property, and all that. But anyway, I appreciate you bringing that to our attention.
And I guess maybe the most frustrating to me is that I've heard countless times from the code enforcement guys, well, it's up to my discretion. I hear that over and over and over again. And you know how frustrating that is when you're in the throw of things and, he can have the discretion on this beach, but 15 minutes later he sees me on another beach and it's not a problem. So.
I like to think that discretion usually goes in the way of not taking enforcement action.
Well, I've gotten 2 tickets on Seascapes Beach.
Okay.
With a permit.
For what was the particular infraction?
The first time is because I didn't have the permit present, but he knew that we had a permit, but I didn't have it on my body. And the second one was because I set up too early, even though the event was from 12 o'clock until 7 o'clock.
Okay. All right. Let's see. I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. I'll address that internally with our officers.
All right. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Thank you. Should we wait for Stacy to get back?
We should.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, let's take a quick break.
If she's done, it's elect her to something important.
Yeah.
That's the rules.
Appoint her.
Okay, so I've compiled a list of all, we'll wait until Stacy gets back to start this actual voting on these items.
Can we have a 5-minute break?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll take a 5-minute break. So I've got the list.
John, thank you, I just couldn't hold it.
I'm sorry.
Any longer. I didn't see anything myself.
You're not taking minutes, are you?
Yeah,
I thought you had a recorder now. I thought that's why we were here.
it's not working.
Oh, it didn't?
Yesterday,
So we moved over here for nothing.
well, it's just messed up this. Yeah, it hasn't made any progress, but it's not right.
Audience want to speak? Okay, haven't seen none.
Okay, I'm going to try to do it through code number, going from beginning to end. So we'll start with definitions. All right, so the first one is add some definition language to the section of tents. And that more definition would be a text change, and it would be including nylon and ropes and flaps under the tent definition to further describe what a tent is. So at this point, you should ask for a motion. Is there a motion? There should be a second. And if there's any more discussion about it, there should be discussion, and then y'all should vote to approve or not approve.
I make a motion that we adopt those minor text changes to help clarify.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, or do we need some discussion?
My only comment on that, Lisa, would be, it says rope. How about using other fasteners? That you're saying there's,
Yeah, they're not fasteners, they're actual flaps.
Okay.
Have you seen them? They're big they're umbrellas, they're actually 8 feet.
oh,
So they're
triangle
big,
flaps?
so they're bigger than what they should be. But yeah, they actually have flaps. They're designed to lie down on the ground, and then they have flaps that come out and pegs that stake them where what they look like is a colorful igloo.
Mm-hmm.
It ultimately, it looks like a tent, like a camping tent with part of the front missing is the best way I know to describe them. And those, as soon as people realized they couldn't use tents on the beach, there was an abundance of sport umbrellas with the flaps down. And so hence, that's why I suggested this wording change.
Now, wouldn't the square footage cover that? If there are 8?
It should, but this is the problem with the 7 feet, 8 feet, whatever. First of all, people who report the problems are not going to go out with a tape measure and measure it.
Right.
Number 2, code enforcement, we're trying to make things easier to enforce, not harder. And code enforcement, too, cannot go out and measure everything. So believe me, maybe these didn't appear in abundance elsewhere. I don't know, Brian, did they? But they became almost instantly the tent of choice that was disguised initially as an umbrella until the flaps were put up and all that stuff.
It seems to me like we keep adding regulations, and I mean, I go back to either we need to allow it or not allow it.
Well,
You
this
know,
is
and
just a
it's-
definition.
Yeah.
It just makes things clearer, because that's the problem they had with enforcement, is they kept having to go back to Sydney over and over to say, okay, does
Well,
this
I
apply
mean, you
or
just
not?
mentioned the enforcement. Who's going to go out there with a tape measure to measure?
Well, no,
but
that's
what
what
you're
we're-
saying though is this puts us into a classification of a tent versus an umbrella. So tents aren't allowed at all in customary use.
Right.
Okay.
This isn't about
But
the
this
size.
isn't.
Yeah, it's about adding flaps.
Okay.
Because the flaps turn it into a tent, is really what
Right.
they do.
Okay, let's have a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? I guess the ayes have it.
Motion carried.
Okay, moving on. Another text change in definitions for vending, definition to include description of vendors. So right now, we have a list that has some inclusions and some exclusions. So this would just be adding more definition of what those vendors are. I.e. adding in photographers and other people that are using a beach for commercial enterprise.
Musicians.
So we're just trying to clarify that even though all they offer is services,
This is actually adding the text, so if you go back to that text, under vending.
how, I'm all for adding that, but I don't know the words that we should, we just add it to this vending definition so that it says something like
We're adding,
including photographers.
So right now, the text says vending means offering for sale or rent, or as part of a contractual agreement, any services, goods, or materials to be consumed or placed on the beach, in the bay, or in the Gulf of their adjoining waters, including but not limited to organized and for-profit instructional exercise classes such as yoga, painting, swimming, surfing, etc. I think that the way that you ought to do it is whenever you have a inclusion list or a exclusion list, then you have argument for you didn't say this specifically, or you didn't say that specifically.
just take it all out,
So
goods
I'll
and
take it all out
services.
and just
Yeah.
have the definition of it, which is what we have, and which is offering service, goods, or material to be consumed or placed on the beach, in the bay, or whatever.
Yeah,
Okay. So it'd be a removal of text in favor of the definition of what is vending.
yeah, not specific.
Right.
Okay. All right, all those in favor?
Can I have a motion?
Got a motion, yeah. We have a motion? So moved. We have a motion, a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, any discussion? All those,
So we're just taking off the things that's, the part that says including but not limited to?
yeah,
Correct.
Okay, and we're just leaving the whole thing with services, goods, blah, blah, okay, good. Yeah.
okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. Moving on to section 2231, horses, dogs on the beach. Adding to section 2 to prorate the permit. So section 2 is the permit section, and we would add language that says permit fees will be rotated. The annual permit fee will be prorated based on time. And so it would be, I would say, on a delineation of per month.
Okay, we need a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion, a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
The only discussion I'd like to make is, I'd like to see it, assuming this makes it easier on the people issuing the permits, that it still means that August 1st is the start and end date. It just means if you happen to move here in March or whatever, you don't have to pay for a whole
Right.
year. Okay, so just with that
Yeah.
clarification.
To me, the fee's just so small that, I mean, it's,
$3.33 per month.
I mean, that doesn't cover the clerical costs. You know, the issue, or the actual permit, the tag, or, I mean, to me, that's just. It's still minimal. It's minimal, yeah.
Well, I can live with it
Okay,
either
so-
way. It's just a
Okay.
suggestion.
It was an item that was brought up, so I would,
Ron,
I would.
do you know, is that still just run out of Defeniac, or do they do it?
It is, it's out of Defuniac. Car tags and the dog permits are run out of
They don't
Defuniac.
run it down here?
No, sir.
We get them at the visitor center.
They come pick them up at the visitor center.
Yeah, it's done online. Yeah.
That's just one complaint I've heard from people is they had to run it through Defeniac.
Well, it's done online, but you can pick them up at the visitor center.
Right.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Well, and I presume it would make things a lot more difficult if the permits were issued on an annual basis, but all different times.
Oh, yeah. they would
Even
be able
though
to
it's
see the
done by,
tags,
yeah, okay, so,
Okay, so,
Okay,
so you
we had a motion and a second, right? We're in discussion, so, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Aye. Okay, fee stays the same. Next one.
Okay, 2254, first item is paragraph C, fishing after warning must cease and desist. So there was a language there's discussion about how do we handle fishing. To be quite honest with you, it's a officer discretion item. I mean, how do you define which person how do you determine which person was there first, which person has the right to be there?
Well,
whatever.
in my opinion, the homesteaders were fishing on the beach for subsistence before the beach bathers were there swimming.
Yeah, I would recommend that we leave this one as it is, but I think you do need to take a vote on to approve or disapprove any changes to this one. So,
What were the changes?
well, once again, there is no change. I mean, the way it reads now is that it's a very hard to enforce item.
I mean, I fish in the morning,
Yeah.
you know.
Be
But
quite honest
it
with
happens
you.
all the time. Somebody walks down
Yeah.
right next to me, walks out in the water and goes
Yeah,
swimming.
I'll be quite honest with you. It's a item that's hard to enforce. We don't encounter it that much, and it usually self-corrects in
Well,
the form of one person
Maybe
giving
we just
away.
don't have a motion.
Yeah,
Then,
okay.
because it's something that I neither fish nor hang out where fishermen,
Yeah.
I don't go in the water where fishermen are fishing. So this one does not matter
say,
to me
okay,
personally, but it's something that's come up on that little section of beach. I deal with it several times, and so I said, hey, I'll present it and see if there's something we can do to help with it, but I'm not sure, I don't know how you do it either.
Yeah, okay. So,
Just skip that one.
lack of motion, we'll move on to the next. Glass containers, add breakable to the text.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Quick question on that, is that something that an officer, code enforcement officer can interpret that? For example, sometimes if somebody had wine on the beach and they get one of those plastic carafes, that somebody can say, well, technically, if I ran over it with this truck, it's breakable.
You could.
I mean, most of it's glass, you know, it's beer bottles or soda
Yeah,
bottles,
but
you
that's
know? I
currently
mean,
how-
that,
That's currently how it reads.
yeah,
I'm just-
but, I mean, what do people actually bring out, you know, that?
Maybe
You're talking
shadow
about a
proof.
wine craft, but, I mean, how often?
Well, somebody, I guess, could, the only thing that I'm trying to prevent, I think it's a, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
I agree,
preventing
I
an
agree.
interpretation to the max that I have my wife brings a drink carrier that's not a Yeti, but, it's one of the plastic ones that they're like, well, that's technically breakable. I don't think that would happen.
Well,
but
if you
know
run
what I'm
over a
saying?
truck, but if you drop it, it's not,
Right,
yeah,
of
if you drop one Yeti and hit another Yeti, it's not gonna break.
Correct.
If you drop one wine glass and hit another wine glass, it's probably gonna break.
Correct.
And so that was, and again, it just seemed like, for instance, what if somebody says, well, this isn't ceramic, it's porcelain? Well, hello, that's breakable too. But it was just a suggestion to alleviate things that might be made of another breakable material. Not that you have to run over with a truck, but that, simple usage can break.
Yeah, well,
Brian,
maybe,
have you found that to be an issue with any of the code enforcement guys?
We deal with glass and, ceramic and,
What ceramic do you find? I mean, a coffee mug in the
Coffee
morning or
mugs in the
something?
morning.
Coffee
they're
cups.
unbreakable. It's a safety issue. Things can break and cut your
Yeah.
feet.
so the word shatterproof. If you bring a container on the beach,
I'll
it
be
should
quite
be
honest with
shatterproof.
you, I think the way it's written now is sufficient.
It's fine.
I'm worried about,
Okay.
the interpretation,
Yeah.
if it's
Okay.
not
That's fine.
cut and dry.
So I'd lack a motion on that. We'll move on to noise.
We had a motion.
Okay,
did
well,
Okay, we have to vote on it?
I'm gonna withdraw the motion, because, like I said,
Withdraw.
these are all things that have been mentioned to me at some time or another, or I looked at, so I'll pick the battles that I wanna really fight. Okay,
Okay, moving on down. Noise, change the distance from 100 feet to 15 feet.
which one?
No, she had a mark on there for the littering for the cigarettes.
Yeah, that,
Or is that just under the?
Was that a no smoking?
No.
that one turned into kind of
That
a no
one would
smoking.
be I have a question mark next to that as to its number, so it would be a new number, and I have it down at the bottom.
Okay.
Okay, so noise, change distance to, this is subsection I, or 2254, paragraph I.
Okay,
Noise.
sorry.
Change distance from 100 feet to 15 feet.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'd
Any
like to make a
discussion?
motion, but based on feedback we got from the audience, and I think her point was well-founded. These days, everybody has earbuds or something they can use. I'd like to make the motion that people use their personal
Yeah,
hearing.
what if you have like a couple of people, 2 or 3 people sitting around, or you and your significant other, and you both have your own earbuds, or you can't put a little,
Well, I guess
radio
you're right, if
between
there's
you.
4 or 5 people
Yeah,
trying to
I'm s-
listen, they're not
yeah.
gonna have that many jacks in one, but,
yeah.
I mean, I think most people listen to their cell phone music or whatever, if there's even iPods anymore, but,
I'm good with the
I
distance,
sure wouldn't
though.
go with more than the 15 feet, because it's just my personal thing, but I don't like music that has a bunch of language in it, for instance.
Yeah.
And we've got little kids out on the beach
Yeah.
and stuff. I don't want to hear a bunch of cuss words and things like that on the beach. So I certainly wouldn't make it more than 15 feet. But if I were going to err on changes we make, and I just want to make this point for everything we do, is 5 years ago, we didn't have the problems we have today. We sure didn't have them 10 years ago. 5 years from now, we're going to have even more people. 10 years from now, we're going to have even more people than that. And the other thing that I think we have to look at, I know that rules are not fun. Nobody loves them. You know, none of us we'd like to all not have rules. But I think it's really important to realize that if you're on the leading edge of establishing rules for people, more and more and more people to get along, you avoid having to change things every year or 2 or 3 or 5 because things have changed demonstrably. And one thing that Walton County has not done as well as they could across the board, it's not just the beaches, it's growth, it's a lot of things, is plan for the future, for 10 years from now, not for just today what we need. So some of what I've talked about today has everything to do with that. Is I don't
kinda
want to see us
have to
change
disagree a
rules
little bit.
every.
I think Walton County's pretty much been on the cutting edge. I mean, our land development code, we changed, you know, Malcolm was responsible for getting so many beach accesses, DOI
Well,
parcels.
we may have.
I mean, we
may
are
have been on the-
experiencing some severe growing pains.
Well, right.
I agree
That's-
with that.
That's my point.
but-
I'm not saying we haven't done well
We
at
have
drawing
done-
people.
yeah,
We've
we-
done well at drawing people. The
No, I
problem
mean
is
in protecting
managing-
our lifestyle
Right.
too.
All right, so what do you want to do
Okay.
about this one?
Okay, so I'll make a motion, and how about I say actually 10 feet, because that gives you 5 feet on either side of a musical device.
Well, we're going from 100 feet.
Yeah. So do you want to make a motion 15? You want to alter it or what?
Is that your motion?
I'm gonna make it 10, because I think that's fairly minimal. It keeps it under effectively 2 umbrellas.
Okay.
Okay.
There's been a
Okay,
motion.
we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Okay, it died for
No
lack of a
second.
second. So we go back to 15 feet then. I'll make the motion with 15.
Okay, we have a motion to do 15 feet. Do we have a
No
second?
second.
No
Okay.
second. Okay.
Okay.
So is anybody willing to reduce it from 100 at all? Okay, well, you make a motion,
Made a
Maurice.
motion. I say 50 feet. I so move 50 feet, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion now for 50 feet. Do we have a second? I guess we just don't want to address radios.
Can
or
we,
music at this
can we
time.
compromise at 25?
Well, he
maybe?
tried 50. And that's not getting us.
Well, 50 to me is not going to make, the problem is we have no guidelines that say umbrellas have to be X amount from each other, or tents, or whatever we end up with. So 50 feet is most lots on the beachfront, if you take an
No, they're
individual
50,
lot, are only 50 or
yeah.
60 feet. And so now that we have customary use in place, that can mean you've got easily 4 to 5 setups across a 50-foot, let's say every 10 feet. So how about 25?
Well, we're not getting any seconds. I don't think anybody on the board
I'll
is
second the
supporting
25,
that.
see what the board says.
Okay. So
I think this is just a matter of
All right, so we had a motion.
being
you had a
good
second.
neighbors.
You had a motion and you had a second.
Do we have a motion and a second?
Yeah.
We have a motion for what?
25.
25 feet and a second. Okay, I guess we've had enough discussion.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that motion failed.
Well, I agree with your good neighbor theory, John. Unfortunately, good neighbor isn't enforceable.
I know.
You know, so, okay.
Moving on, 2254Q, tents. The discussion or the recommendation was either, it was to ban tents, but allow by permit. And then there was a second part of that that said allow in sections of beach, mainly the back tier, which we will define as 1/3 of the back section of the beach.
Minus
or
the
you-
corridor.
Yeah, or you want to do a half?
No, not half.
Okay, 1/3 then. Okay.
So this is a motion to allow,
That's
or
not a
this
motion.
is, we haven't made a motion.
This was an item that was brought up, it's on the list, so the board
To
needs
allow tents,
to ban tents, only allow by permit. Or only, it should just be to allow tents by permit.
what, like a special event permit? If it-
Or a permit like you, there's other items that are allowed on the beach by permit, large items that are not easy to remove from the beach.
Well, there's also bonfires, dogs. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got a number
Yeah.
of things that are done by permit, so we know how to do that.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we, that we ban tents without a permit.
I don't think we can make tent owners get a permit. Somebody coming in from out of town, they gotta stop by Defuniak on their way into town to
Okay.
get a permit for their tent? Hmm?
Put on a second,
We can discuss. Yeah.
Guess we don't.
Do we? Have you-
We don't even have a motion, do we?
We have one motion,
Yeah,
but you
I made a
no
motion.
discussion without a second, so we just.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Move on.
Section R, 15 foot from water's edge, dune edge.
Can't read your writing.
No, I didn't write good enough notes, I guess.
This apply to everyone was asked.
Should apply to everyone. Okay, meaning the exemption we have right now for privately held property.
Say that again?
Right now, the 15 foot on the water's edge applies to public beach.
No, I didn't, I was just asking for
Oh,
clarification
okay.
on that. I didn't mean, but.
That's a
but-
safety issue, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that should
So
go.
mobility is.
Well,
right?
it's just how do you keep people
Okay.
with little kids and all, but can we go back to Q? If we're not gonna consider a ban on tents, can we at least vote on the alternative of having the tents set back? Or did you not wanna even consider that, John?
Well, we're not allowing them.
We didn't vote to disallow them, did we? I had missed it if we did.
Yeah, there was no vote on tents. So you just want a prohibition on tents altogether?
Well, that's what I mean. Since there was no second, it means that we keep the 6 by 6 by 6 thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that has been miserable to enforce. So
Been tough.
can we, do we want to just totally ignore the tent issue, even though it was probably one of the biggest problems this summer?
I think it is a problem. I think that people are using them, they're setting up on private property. We
Okay.
can't stop that.
So then I think to further discussion, there needs to be a motion that basically says we prohibit tents.
And we're not talking about the sunshade for the kids. I mean, I thought that's why we allowed the 6 by 6 for some sunshade for the kids.
But I don't think the 6 by 6 by 6 is not an issue. There's nobody that goes to the beach and goes, the darn 6 by 6 are out again.
Yeah,
It's the 12-foot tents, which is already illegal, that's tough to
but
enforce.
it can't, yeah.
So even if we ban tents, I guess it makes it easier marketing to say there's no tents, period, whether it's 6 or 12 foot. but you're either A, gonna ban everything, or B, you're gonna do the second alternative, which is the back third or something, but you're gonna allow bigger tents. You know, because I think the 6x6 wasn't an issue if it was actually 6x6.
Mhm.
Nobody uses a 6x6.
Yeah.
I
And
didn't know if
they
it
group
exists.
them, you know,
Yeah,
some
people
people.
are
would
still
group them
using the
together.
10x10s, so,
Yeah.
I mean, what we did so far is not really working for us.
Correct.
Which is why I was trying to propose something
Yeah.
that's more enforceable, that's consistent. If you don't have a permit, you don't have a tent.
But per customary use, is a 6x6 allowed on somebody's private property?
No. Customary use is no tents whatsoever, except,
So it's really just not enforced.
it's, well, it is enforced, but only
difficult
if
to
the
enforce.
property owner or a designated agent. So, for instance, if somebody goes out of town, they may have enforced it all summer, but if they go out of town for a week and a half to see their kids or whatever, then during that week, it will not be enforced while they're gone, because they personally are not there to enforce it. Now, there are some other alternatives that could be tried, but I don't know how difficult this is for code enforcement. But on vendors, which you'd be acutely aware of, on private property, if Brian and Jeff have a written statement from property owners that say no vending on my property, then they could enforce no vending on the property. I think that's harder with tents, maybe, but maybe it isn't. Brian, you and Jeff would have to address that. Enforcement's not my forte.
We have found that, size restrictions on items and different rules and regulations by different beach areas, be it ownership or location or whatever, are problematic. And so the best codes are codes that say you can do this or you cannot do this.
Okay.
And so I think at this
Let's
point.
do 2 votes then. We'll just vote for,
I
to
think-
allow them
I think
on the
if-
back third, and then another vote to not allow them. See how
Allow
it-
them back third for 6x6 or of any.
For anything,
I
Tent,
guess a max of 10 or 12 feet or something.
yeah.
just tent. And those tents are defined.
Okay, let's have a vote on this. Anybody
But
have a
this wouldn't
motion?
apply to customer use.
Not a customary use.
Okay,
This would strictly be a
public
public.
beach area.
It would actually be a county code that, often does affect, can and may affect private property.
It does. Whether that's the intention or not,
Yeah.
it does.
So you need a motion?
Okay, yeah, we need a motion to allow tents, all sizes, up to, say, 12 by 12 on the back third of the beach. Do we have a motion for that? Okay, no motion. Let's move on to the next vote to not allow any tents at all on the beach. Do we have a
Without
motion
permit.
for that?
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
Do we have a motion and a second? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Aye. Okay, I guess it stays the way
Okay.
it is.
I thought that was approved.
What's that?
I thought you had an approval.
Let's do a roll
There's
call.
more.
Let's do a roll call so we know what we have for sure.
You had 3, 1, 2, and David against you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I just
Yeah.
couldn't tell. I heard
It
John.
was 2 to 3.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Believe me, I think it's a very complex issue based on all the reconciliation of 2254, 2260, and now to section 23. You've got all these disparate, you have to be an expert in property law and beach rights. I mean, it's mind-boggling, and there aren't any easy solution to keep everyone happy right now. So I'm not sure where that is. Like he just said, all or nothing. Frankly, I don't know where I stand on it yet. And if I'm not mistaken, this year with the ban on the public properties with the new canopies, your code enforcement guys were tasked more with informing, educating, and letting people know as they came down, so that those people who weren't dissuaded from coming back and given a warning, that we will start in earnest this season to enforce and see how that goes. So this first year was more of a exploratory, introducing the ordinance, educating, doing selective enforcement where really necessary for those obstinate people. And then this would be the first full year where we try to enforce it and see how it pans out. Am I misunderstanding that?
That's
No,
correct.
but,
Okay, well then in that case, I don't feel like we should move on it right now. That's my vote.
well, and the problem that, you don't necessarily realize is because, and I totally understand why the enforcement was done the way it was, but there is not really a good rule for keeping tents off of private beaches. There just isn't one. I mean, even though it says it, because it requires each individual owner. So if I know my neighbor doesn't allow tents on their property, for, you know, I can't do anything about that unless they've literally sent a letter to Brian that says, you know, because they can't just, I can't just say, oh, gee, to my whoever, send a letter to Brian Kellenberger that says no tents allowed on my property, because they're not doing it that way. And this, by the way, is one I think is worth thinking about, and not in an ugly way, but what my whole objective here is 10 years from now, there are beaches all over our coastlines of the United States that have recognized this as a problem, and they're doing something about it. We have prettier beaches than any of those people do. And we bring people here in droves. Do we want the kind of tourists that really are so, pardon the expression, but hell-bent on, I have to have a tent, I'm not willing to accept umbrellas as a shade source? Or do we want the kind of tourists that are willing to come in here and abide by some fairly reasonable rules so that more people can enjoy the beach peacefully together? And that's really it, and to make it easier to enforce, because I know for sure that it wasn't easy to enforce this year. I know that because I was part of, you know, reporting. I was an agent for multiple people that are out-of-town owners that wanted their rights protected and had no way to do it without being right here looking out their windows all day. So I know that this is a hot button for me, because and I know how hard the code enforcement guys tried to do, but you can't get across 26 miles of beach for every call. So, you know, I'm sorry that this board doesn't see, you know, that issue quite the same as I do, and I respect that.
My issue is enforcement. If there's a property owner that rents his house out, and that property owner wants their guests to be able to enjoy the beach and do whatever, have their tent, they're not going to say that tents aren't allowed on their property.
No, but then they have to have a permit for a tent on their property. They have to have a permit.
Okay, so that property owner gets a permit for a tent on their property, so all their guests that rent their property can put up a tent.
Because it's a
So
permit
if
for that
they're,
property.
you know, on the sides of the public beach access, everybody's gonna go down with their tents and go over to these property owners that allow tents on their property.
Well,
And so, I mean, we're just gonna be moving the problem over, and it's not something that we can enforce. And people, I mean, I'm saying Blue Mountain because I witnessed it there a couple of times. You know, they're going right down there. No, you can't set up your tent here. Well, what about him? You know, right next to him. He can set up his, but I can't set up mine. That just doesn't work. Either we don't have them or we have them in the back. I mean, I think it's
Okay.
one way or
All right,
another.
so on those two items, we had a no motion on the section of the beach to allow tents, and then it was disapproved on the ban on tents.
Yes, both
Okay.
motions were
All right.
Okay.
So,
failed.
moving on. Next one is tobacco products on the beach. I think that you probably should consider it on public beaches and not necessarily on private beaches. Doubt it will be past legal department on prohibiting what people can do on their private property as opposed to something.
What about all this prohibiting what people can do on their private property? Didn't we?
County codes.
Didn't we come up with that on the dog issue? That
County code, that we did, but the county codes often regulate activity on private property. Usually it's activity that is a nuisance to adjacent property owners. Okay, so that's where most county codes that are property-based come from. Beach codes, a little bit different, but not too much different. So, you know, I'm not saying you can't just say, you know, no smoking on the beach. I'm just saying that I would look at it on a public property-based situation first.
Yeah, it seems like a
But-
lot of these issues are ownership rights.
They could
Property
be.
owner has a right to do what they want with their property.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like you said, as long as it doesn't,
But they don't have
isn't a
any right to
nuisance.
tell other people, like, let's say you're a non-drinker. You can't tell somebody else that they can't drink on your property.
Right.
If you're a non-smoker, you can't tell, well, in customary use, they.
Well, yeah, I
prohibit
could if
tobacco.
somebody- I
You
wouldn't.
can, yeah.
Okay. All right, so that was the item we had on the list.
Okay, do we want to, do we have a motion for no smoking on public beaches?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Anybody?
I personally hate smoking. I've never smoked in my life, but this kind of goes back to my previous comment of I don't know how we can keep adding rules and regulations. I hate smoking. I want everybody to get that clear, but I just don't want to add another piece to the boardwalk or design of another rule that somebody has to abide by. But I feel hypocritical on this one because I don't like it, but I don't.
I don't like it either, but I don't think we should prohibit other people from doing it.
Okay.
So, okay, let's,
Do we have a public comment?
okay, come on. Wait, are we
Dave
supposed to
Meadows.
allow public comment or?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, you're supposed to.
Oh, yeah, right?
That's the Dave Meadows exception.
Hey, on the smoking on the beach. I mean, I'm in the tourist business. We provide beach service up and down 26 miles of beautiful beach in Walton County. Majority of the people that come to our beaches, they ask, "Are we allowed to drink? Are we allowed to smoke?" Because where they go on their public beaches or state beaches, you can't do it. And so why are we just waiting to get to that point? I mean, I agree with Philip, it's rules and this and that, but let's protect what we have. I mean, the cigarette thing, the smoke and so forth, when you're on the beach, wind blows in one direction, it sometimes, just goes out in the air and blah, 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 but the end result is the cigarette butts all over the beach. It's littering. It's flat out littering. It's a law. It's prohibited.
We have a lot of people that leave all their
Enforce
beer
it.
cans next to their chair, too.
Exactly, and the vendor usually has to pick every last bit of it up and get it up into the lovely cans that the TDC provides. So we're cleaning that up, but the cigarette butts are really hard to do. I mean nets, or once again, get back to the beach cleaning machine that goes up and down the beach like they do in Okaloosa County. Clean the beaches. Do something. But let's clean up our beaches, let's protect our beaches, and if we can take little rules that people are already used to in other areas that they come from, well, let's all go down there and we can do whatever we want at Walton County. I mean, I know we have, things going on, but I mean, it's the little things.
For tourists
The
that come
little
here,
thing.
that there are some freedoms that aren't allowed in other beaches.
Do
I
we
mean, I
want,
grew
do
up
we
over
want to be
in
known?
Jacksonville.
Does Walton County want to be known to be a draw to come here and do what you want? Litter our beaches, throw your cigarette butts down, leave your cans here, blast your music, and do all that? I don't want to be part of that county and have that coming here.
I don't think that's what we're.
But once again, Lisa's right. If you go, be proactive. Don't sit there and address issues right now. Think what's going to happen to our county in the future. We build, we build, we build. They keep coming, they keep coming. We have more and more. I love it because it's great for my business. I get rent chairs and umbrellas.
Beaches, though. I mean,
But I want the beaches
on a public
protected.
street or a public right of way, smoking's not illegal.
No, it's not. But at the same time, you don't have the mass of people messing up what is the draw to our area. The draw to our area is the beaches, not your sidewalk, not your front road or anything like that. It's our beaches, and that's what we're here to protect. And that's stewards of the county commissioners should be doing that, the committee should be doing that, everybody should be doing that as a citizen of our county. Protect what we have, and that's our biggest asset. So I'm just asking you to consider these things instead of just, let's move on to the next issue. I mean, work around it a little bit more, but smoking on public beaches probably should be banned. Or it really should. And on private beaches, let the condos or the houses or whatever make up their own rules. HOAs have a lot of rules, and the guests have to abide them. Sometimes the HOA rule is way stricter than the county rule is on a public beach. No tents, no drinking, no smoking, no digging holes, no doing these things, and those things are enforced every single day by the stewards of the association.
And those guests still come down and still pay thousands of dollars to stay at that property. But they abide by the rules that are established for that association. Why can't Walton County establish rules? Same thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think
I wish
those-
I could have said it that eloquently.
Yeah, I think those comments are really, it just gets me to think that was an unintended consequence is the cigarette butts. I didn't think about that, but it is a consequence, and we have a chance to address it.
Oh, I agree the cigarette butts are a problem, but, I mean, one of the reasons I moved here 20-something years ago was because of the personal freedoms that we have here. And, I mean, I don't think that we should be reducing or restricting our personal freedoms to address cigarette butts. It just,
Okay.
I'm not a smoker, I don't like it, I don't like the cigarette butts, I don't like picking them up.
Okay, I believe
But
we
if
have
you
a
want to
Okay, we
smoke,
got a
darn
motion
it.
and a second.
second, and you probably need to take a vote.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion is
Pub-
to ban smoking on public.
Right.
What would legal say about that?
On public,
Yes, sir.
we have the right to do it. On public.
If you have a business,
Mhm.
you can ban smoking on your property. So
That's private though. It's
Well,
not
that's-
public.
That's true, but I mean, like arenas, sometimes public arenas have a total ban on smoking, they're public. So, I mean, it's not like it's against the law to do it, it's.
All right, let's have a vote.
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay, or say same sign. Aye.
David?
I'm gonna bite on this one, yes,
Okay.
Do I get a vote?
Yeah, you're the chair, you get a vote.
Well, it's 3-3 then.
Is it 3-3?
3-3,
If it's
then-
3 to
then it
3.
dies. Tie vote is a dead vote, is a no vote.
Safety.
You're a no?
Okay, moving on. Before we go to the next page here, I'd like to remind everybody that as a committee, you know, we're tasked with doing what's good for all of the county. I appreciate everybody's personal opinions. Let's don't get caught up in them too much. Let's, we've identified these items. Let's, have a brief discussion about them. If their discussion is needed, we've already had a pretty good discussion on all of them. So let's get through them. We've got, a whole nother page and a half to get through.
Let's go.
And, okay, so all right, so next item, 2260. I'm sorry, let me go do some more 2254 that was brought up by South Walton Fire District. So the issue of bonfires, so this would be section 2254B. It's 2254B. I don't have a page number because the pages are numbered differently on these documents up here. But if you get to section 2254B, which is fires, the recommendation or the suggestion was to add verbiage that expresses or that identifies and allows grills on the beach, and that would be by type and size. And so the type was gas, and the size was 225 square inches of cooking surface.
Okay, do we have a motion? We have a motion, a second?
Second.
Motion and well, who moved? Brian moved?
Brian.
Lisa second?
Does that include the 1 pound canister too, or is it separate?
That's another item. It's another
Okay.
item.
It's another
This is just
separate.
addressing grills.
Okay.
Well, we gotta kind of combine them together, don't we?
Well, we can add that, just under fires in general, that.
I mean, the grills,
Any type of fire requires a 10-pound, fire extinguisher.
oh,
So it's
okay, that's,
actually.
you're talking about
That's under 8.
I thought we were talking
He
about
was
the
actually
propane
talking-
canister.
That's with generators, yeah.
Okay.
Instead
Sandy
of
was
grills,
actually referring
okay.
to the.
This is the
requirement.
grill with a 1 pound propane tank.
Correct.
That's included, okay. Okay, we had a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries.
Okay, so the next item was under bonfires B1, establishing an end time. Previous discussion was that it was an end time for removal from the beach. And there was a few different times suggested, 10, 11, or 12. And then there's also a recommendation or suggestion that time may vary based on the season of the year.
I think
And
the
so-
varying in the season of the year is a good idea.
Okay. Other areas of the code are segmented by the daylight saving times versus regular time.
Mm-hmm.
So is that what the board would?
Say 10 o'clock in the winter and 12 o'clock in the,
I don't think we necessarily
Summer?
need to get complicated. I
I
think
said
we
we
just
just go
have-
one set time, just makes it easier for code enforcement. I make a motion, we just have it for midnight, 12 a.m. You cut off for all fires to be extinguished on the beach.
And I would add,
Is that a motion?
I would add
Yes.
to that, that if it was extinguished, did we, as a board, want to add the time that, and the requirement that it must be removed from the beach? If we did want to do that, I'd say an hour example, by 1 a.m. it is removed from the beach.
I would suggest that you just do a removal time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's
I
up
think
to
the
the, up to
removal
the,
by
up to the person in
midnight's
charge of
probably
that
good.
fire to make, a good decision on how earlier to extinguish.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah, the one exception I would say would be New Year's Eve. They usually last till midnight. And so if we can have that record of
Good point.
That's a good point, yeah. So, well, do we want to make it 1?
I think the whole entire intent of the rule is to get people to remove it off the beach. It doesn't really matter. If we had an issue and a lot of complaints of
Mhm.
people being loud and crazy at 11, that'd be one thing, but I don't think we have that. I think it's a matter of, hey, they're keeping it overnight on the beach, which is not good for a lot of
Mhm.
people. So I don't,
I'll amend the motion to go to 1 a.m. because what the gentleman, thank you for bringing it up, appreciate it.
Okay.
Amend the motion to have all fires extinguished and removed by 1 a.m.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Okay. Next one involves fire extinguishers, in particular to generators listed in 2254G. Recommendation was changed from 20 pound to a 10 pound.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
Okay. Next items deal with 2260. First one is going to be C6, and that was storage boxes and storage at the toe of the dune. There was some discussion that all items have to be stored in storage boxes. Is that correct, Lisa? Lisa? Is that what it
Yes.
was? All items? Vendor equipment?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd prefer everything that was gonna be stored at the toe of dune be in a box, but if not, the vendor chairs, at least they're good about making them neat and tight, so I guess we could do, but all the other stuff,
Okay,
I don't
so
know
that'd be-
how to differentiate. Is
that'd
it
be-
a
yeah.
non-vendor? What do we
Well,
call it,
it's-
non-vendor?
It's regulated under 2254, the obstructions clause. And so, the key definition or word in there is beach. So beach is defined as toe of the dune to the water's edge. Actually, toe of dune, a line of permanent vegetation. We use the southernmost or the seawardmost point of permanent structure, meaning boardwalk. And so I think that if you wanted to regulate that, it would be increasing the area of where it is not allowed. So in other words, say dune system and beach.
Well, that would work for me.
Is that for all private stuff? We were talking about putting it under the boardwalk or something.
Yeah, I mean,
That-
I think the biggest offenders in some case are private, and when I say that's not necessarily individual private homes, but, like condos, for
Right.
instance, where they've got 12 families worth of people or whatever with all their collective stuff. I mean, I'd like it to be behind the dune would be my preference of how to say it. Because otherwise, I mean, if you could say out of sight, except as you point out, there are places that there's not really a good way to,
Yep.
if it's very flat, you can't really get it out of sight without taking it inside the house or the condo.
Like I say, the easiest way to get the behavior you want would be to define the area as opposed to a subjective thing of out of sight.
So say behind the dune system would
Mm-hmm.
define it, because you guys have to enforce it, so
Mm-hmm.
I need words that work for you.
I would say dune system.
Okay, what's the motion? To store all?
It'd be 2254 obstructions, that, no storage of beach equipment allowed on the beach or dune system.
And that would include vendors or no then?
2254 would be the general public's.
Okay.
And then 2260D 10, I think it is the storage clause under, I'm sorry, it's paragraph 2 that says the delivery vendor may allow it to be stored at the toe of the dune.
Yeah.
Provided rented the next day.
Yeah.
So you would have to say, you can make it'd be a dual, it really needs to be 2 items for consideration, 2254 and 2260.
And if it's in 2254, does that mean that vendors have to abide by it as well? Because
I had that question last time.
Well, since 2260 regulate vendors, they are set aside as a, I guess, protected class, so to speak. And so it specifically says that vendors are allowed to store their equipment at the toe of the dune, provided it's to be rented the next day. So that would mean that if you did not change in 2260, you would still be able to store your equipment at the toe of the dune.
Okay.
Do vendors rent anything besides chairs, umbrellas, kayaks? I mean, do they rent any little stuff like that, like floats and stuff like that? Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we have a yes. So we have a
They do?
we need a motion.
I would take it separately. I would do it.
Floats, boogie boards.
Yeah.
We need a motion to store all beach equipment off the beach or off the dune system.
Right.
That's
I
that's our.
I make a motion to store it
Okay.
off the,
Beach or
land-
dune.
Landward of the
Of
dune
the dune,
system.
okay.
Landward of the dune
Do
system.
we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion?
Just a little clarification, would this include all private beach, would this include public and private?
Public and
I
private.
think both,
So
yeah.
let's, to just help me understand this scenario, you have a private homeowner who likes to keep their kayak on the beach. What would the code enforcement officer, if this was passed, what would he say you can and cannot do?
Instructions already has a verbiage in there for items that are difficult to remove from the beach, may be left on the beach. However, they're still subject to federal and state take incidents.
So let's say, I mean, just let's XYZ product, a backpack chair that Gulfront owner has that they leave. Where is the safe zone? Where is the not safe zone? Or
I would say that would fall under an item that is easily removed from the beach and therefore would be subject to code enforcement action. Kayaks, paddle boards, most people don't leave high dollar items on the beach.
right.
Kayaks, they may, that section of code was designed to protect like Hobie cats,
Sure.
stuff
Yeah.
like that.
But what is is there a defining line of what is, and I guess I'd have to understand the motion more clearly.
Dune system, is defined as I don't know the exact coastal definition, but it would be understood as the frontal dune, top of the dune, and the back side of the dune.
In the motion is that it has to be behind the dune system,
Landward of the dune system.
which
Yeah,
essentially
behind the
means it's
crest.
gotta be,
So no more storing it under the boardwalk.
Yeah,
you cannot do that, correct?
No.
Yeah, basically what it's saying.
except your kayak or things that you can't easily take off the beach.
Like, for instance, one of our beachfront owners just puts their chairs, which is one thing you're concerned about, up, they just put it on their bottom landing of their walkover.
No, I mean, the main thing I'm actually asking is just for private property owners, what
Mhm.
they,
Mhm.
I just wouldn't wanna be a part of passing something that they're like, are you kidding me, I can't do this, and I own this
Yeah.
land, or
I
whatever.
can't leave my chair in my front yard,
Right.
Yeah. So, not stored on the beach or dune system, maybe add some verbiage that says, try to distinguish that the boardwalk, dune walkover is a permitted structure and therefore storage on it is allowed. So,
On or behind.
That's getting pretty complicated.
Yeah,
It-
yeah, it
it's
gets
very
more complicated.
Yeah,
for sure.
okay, so let's go ahead and have a vote. The motion was to store all beach equipment landward of the dune system. So do we have, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Do we need a second first?
We had a,
We said, you have a second.
yeah. Discussion? Okay, we had ayes. Those opposed? Aye.
David, who
You
are you?
didn't vote? Opposed.
Okay.
Okay.
Did live. All right.
Moving on.
Okay. 2260 D3 C, clear quarter to water's edge. This is for the lifeguard stand. So clear quarter from the toe of the dune to the water's edge.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
Okay.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. Paragraph D10, 2260 D10, manipulation or changing of vendor zone resulting in a fine.
Let's just revoke their vendor license.
Okay, we have that in another section.
Okay.
Do we have 3 strikes rule or something?
Yeah, I think we don't have the 3 strike rule. It's permit revocation by administrative hearing. So in other words, if it is recommended the permit be revoked, or there is a request for a permit to be revoked by Walton County Administrative Department, then they then have a hearing, meaning sit down with legal and vendor and discuss.
What's the fine?
Oh, it'd just be the regular fine system, so maybe we should just change it to be unlawful. Okay.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
As far as I know, I'm recusing myself from the things that I brought forward on behalf of the South
Yeah.
Walton Fire District, so I can't make a motion or vote, just to clarify.
So, we have a motion that moving the lifeguard tower will result in a fine.
I'll second that.
I would say don't do vendor zone demarcation device. Because we have the same issue with our vendor zone poles.
Okay.
So,
So manipulate
changing
the
of
vendor
yeah.
zone
Yeah.
demarcation.
Manipulation or changing the vendor zone, unlawful.
Okay. We have a motion, we have a second.
Absolutely.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Okay, back to 2254. This is another South Walton Fire District suggestion. Paragraph H2, include South Walton Fire District as authority to close beach. So include them in the group of agencies that are defined as the people that collaborate to make a decision on closure of the beach. Keep in mind that the water closure and beach closures are 2 different things.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Moving on.
Okay. Next item, 2259, special events. Require deposit or bond for special event permits issued to non-permitted vendors. I would recommend taking out a bond, or don't use the word bond, but use the word deposit. And then
Okay.
deposit to be determined by board resolution. Okay.
Okay, now, and this applies, this is only weddings under 30 people.
Special events.
Special events.
Mhm.
Say it one more time.
Deposit for special event permits issued to non-permitted vendors. So deposit required for special event permits issued to non-permitted vendors.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries.
All right, one last item is under permitting, so 2260, paragraph B, 1, and paragraph C, which is the areas where the permit, required permit verbiage is, and it is to establish a service type vendor permit, and then fee to be determined by BCC resolution, like all the other fees are determined. So that would be the establishment of another class of beach vendor, and that would be a service type vendor.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion, a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion?
let you understand what that means a little more.
Okay, so right now we have a single permit fee for beach vendor, and there's no distinguishing between type of vendor. So as we, Beach Code Enforcement, have been enforcing the code as it is written and pertaining to the definition of vending, it has come to our attention that some vendors are offering simply a service on the beach and are not placing goods or materials on the beach. And so part of the usage fee, the permit fee, is to help resolve the problem of congestion, recognizing that they are a small contributor to congestion. There should be some consideration for a service vendor type permit with a reduced fee.
So that would not apply to a whole band, for instance, but it might apply to a musician that just has
Well,
a minimal.
it wouldn't be to allow bands on the beach, because they would trigger multiple other reasons for special event permits.
So this one's largely for photographers.
This is for the small.
Musicians.
Yeah, or an officiant at a wedding or
Yeah.
something like that.
Correct.
Yeah, okay,
Okay, do we have a motion?
so moved.
Do we have a second?
Where's second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Carries. That gets us to the end of our list.
All right.
Did we get to the do the 10-pound extinguisher?
We did.
Oh, okay, sorry, I missed somehow.
We did. Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank everybody
Okay.
for their Chairman, I'd like to address the board. I'd like to thank everybody for the participation. Good comments, good discussion. I know it's long and I know it's laborious. As Beach Management Committee, it's our task. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate the general public hanging around, listening, and you know,
Being involved.
concerned for how we do our business. So thank you all.
Good input.
And see you at the next meeting. You want to close the meeting?
Yeah, just looking and see, is there any other council comments or public comments? Okay.